Jiang Chengxuan decided to trust his instincts and follow the heavenly calculation technique to immediately begin his departure from the area. Taking a moment to regulate his breathing on the spot, he gradually restored his state to its peak. With each breath, his Tao manifested naturally. He then transformed once more into a five-colored streak of light, dashing in the direction indicated by the heavenly calculation technique. As expected, at the far end of the profound void, another terrifying sea of fire ignited, with countless meteors wielding the might of Tao integration descending once again. What followed was inevitably an intense battle. Jiang Chengxuan unleashed all his power of Tao mastery, sweeping his hand as true sun fire transformed into a vast tidal wave, engulfing the meteor swarm. The collision of the two fiery seas instantly whipped up 100-meter-high super waves, with the giant meteors shattering within them, like tiny splashes in the colossal waves. Despite having gone through two major battles at the level of Tao mastery, the power Jiang Chengxuan unleashed at this moment was still as formidable as in his prime, commanding awe and respect. This was the power of the Samsara Tao combined with the five elements Tao. He alone was like the entire world, with his dharmic power and Tao rules cycling around him. Soon, Jiang Chengxuan repelled wave after wave of meteor showers, making significant progress toward the exit. Then came the meteors bearing the might of Tao mastery, majestic in their approach. Under the devastating explosion of the five elements' annihilation light, the void trembled continuously, with stars shattering into dust. After a series of cataclysmic disturbances, from that last meteor wielding the power of Tao mastery, a faint treasured light burst forth, obviously another nearly level 9 treasure. Jiang Chengxuan reached out and collected this treasure into his palm. This time, he did not inspect it thoroughly, merely sensing the Tao power within it briefly before storing it away. After breaking through the third wave of meteor showers, the heavenly calculation technique within Jiang Chengxuan began to operate again. In the divinations, the way out became increasingly clear, while the hidden hint of danger grew more distinct and chilling. Even with his experience, Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Something terrifying was definitely lurking behind this meteor formation, and it had already faintly sensed his presence. Now, it was crucial to leave this area immediately. Jiang Chengxuan then activated the power of Samsara, frantically replenishing his dharmic power, quickly restoring his condition to its peak for another round of challenges. For Jiang Chengxuan, who had become accustomed to the process, the meteors of Tao integration and Tao fusion were now easily extinguished, but the Tao mastery meteors still required careful handling. The roar of the great battle once again resounded through this part of the void. But time swiftly moved to several days later. A massive nebula filled the pitch-black void, where meteors and shattered rules intertwined, colliding and sparking intense explosions, creating a spectacular scene. A figure tread upon the sea of fire, bursting forth from the nebula and disappearing almost instantly. This was Jiang Chengxuan emerging from the meteor formation, now speckled with stardust and finally showing signs of fatigue. Over these several days, he had forcefully broken through 2 meteor showers, unleashing all his combat power, and had finally left that place safely within the nick of time. Almost immediately after his departure, the danger foretold by the heavenly calculation technique reached its peak, a truly narrow escape. But ultimately, it was a close call without harm, and Jiang Chengxuan found himself safely out just in time. Not far ahead, a portal emitting purple glazed light flickered intermittently. This was the exit from this place. After carefully recalculating the omens of fortune and misfortune using the heavenly calculation technique, Jiang Chengxuan finally settled down, taking a moment to breathe and regroup. He also took out all his acquisitions from this journey, 5 spiritual items emitting unbelievable treasured light, quietly lying in his hand. Including the 2 items he had acquired earlier, he had now collected a total of 5 nearly level 9 spiritual items and materials. Primordial fruit, cosmic crystal, purple chi essence, true sun gold pill, and meteoric lotus. Each of these treasures was capable of igniting a major battle across realms. Purple chi essence, born from the essence of a dead star, is usually produced from the death of a star. Yet the piece Jiang Chengxuan held was the size of 3 fingers, terrifyingly potent. This item also had the effect of extending life to avoid tribulations, with its formidable nature going without saying. Moreover, consuming purple chi essence could also help one comprehend the cosmic Tao, significantly enhancing the chance of advancement to Tao mastery, much like the black lotus that Qin Shenwu had given him earlier. The true sun gold pill, meanwhile, could be integrated into a heaven-reaching spirit treasure to break through to a mysterious heavenly treasure, enhancing the potential for evolution. Even if the evolution failed, the spirit treasure would still gain the ability to unleash true solar fire, significantly increasing its offensive power. As for the meteoric lotus, it too was derived from the demise of countless meteors from beyond the domain, each extinction possibly giving rise to a single meteoric lotus. It was an incredibly rare entity. Consuming this lotus could also extend one's lifespan to evade tribulations, while granting its owner the power to manipulate meteors, a kind of exotic rule from beyond the domain. For those seeking opportunities in extraterrestrial realms, this was undoubtedly a formidable ability. Looking over these treasures, Jiang Chengxuan, despite his fatigue, felt immensely satisfied. Just the 5 nearly level 9 spiritual items and materials made this trip to the celestial cave immensely worthwhile. After all, if not in the extraterrestrial realms, gathering such high-tier spiritual items and materials might take over 100,000 years, if not more. Opportunities like these do not come often. After carefully inventorying his gains, Jiang Chengxuan prepared once again, ready to leave this place. It was also time to go and find Shen Ruyan and the others. Without further hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan stepped into the purple-lit portal. Soon after, he experienced a sensation of the world turning, followed quickly by the feeling of his feet touching solid ground. When he opened his eyes, he found himself on a vast platform. This platform, the size of a temple's foundation, was extremely ancient in design, resembling the great halls of ancient gates. The only difference was that this massive platform was surrounded by numerous mysterious runes, emitting a grand, ancient, and profound vibration. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan was not in a rush, but decided to record all the ancient runes around him first. These runes might represent an ancient technique worth studying. He transformed into a beam of light and surveyed the entire ancient platform, finding nothing but runes and foundation stones that constituted this area. However, Jiang Chengxuan frowned slightly, sensing that something was amiss. The ancient stone platform was clearly indicated as the exit by the heavenly calculation technique, yet after scouring the area, he found no exit or any transport mechanism. This suggested that the ancient platform was not merely a simple teleportation node, but likely harbored some special function. Given his recent ordeal through the meteor showers, Jiang Chengxuan felt uneasy, suspecting that the owner of this place might have left some kind of test here. Immediately, he adjusted his breathing to perfection and quickly activated heavenly calculation technique within him. Once again, the prophesied world materialized in his mind. This time, what appeared in his mind's eye was an altar-like structure, confirming his suspicion that this place served a purpose beyond mere transportation. To his surprise, in the 4 cardinal directions of the ancient stone platform, east, south, west, and north, something seemed buried, harboring immensely terrifying energy. These forces manifested in 4 colors, blue, red, green, and purple, resembling 4 massive stars suppressed beneath the platform, yet seemingly ready to burst forth at any moment. Jiang Chengxuan's expression turned grave. He had inspected these 4 spots before. Indeed, they were densely inscribed with ancient runes. Rumble! Just as he prepared to investigate further, a tremendous roar suddenly filled the space. The ancient platform violently shook as if it were a small boat in a giant wave. 4 massive energies erupted from the platform's corners, each like a giant stone pillar connecting to the void. These energies also contained incredibly powerful Tao auras, hinting at the existence at Tao mastery level. The blue pillar manifested a reversed galaxy 3,000 feet tall with ceaseless waves, emanating the tremendous force of the water Tao, dyeing a corner of the void like an ocean. The red pillar emitted intense heat from the fire Tao, with branches of fire extending like a giant tree reaching the sky, setting the heavens aflame with red. Where the green pillar erupted, it whipped up a destructive storm, tearing the void apart with its ferocious wind Tao, forming a vacuum. The purple pillar thundered, unleashing countless devastating bolts of thunderous purple electricity, each miles long, scarring the void like wounds of the heavens. Water, fire, wind, thunder. These 4 forces were incredibly destructive and aggressive, clearly indicating trouble had arrived at his doorstep. Under the onslaught of these 4 violent and destructive forces, the entire stone platform was completely engulfed, turning into a veritable inferno. Fortunately, Jiang Chengxuan reacted in time and manifested the five elements samsara world, creating a sanctuary. Outside this world, waves of fury, celestial fire, wild winds, and rampant thunder rolled in, with continuous explosions in the air as the forces of the Tao collided, causing the void to tremble violently. However, the ordeal was far from over. In Jiang Chengxuan's solemn gaze, the intensifying forces of the four elements triggered the mysterious runes on the ancient stone platform. The runes lit up one by one, shining into the void like countless stars. Then they shot out from the platform, imprinting on the four elemental pillars and arranging themselves into a peculiar humanoid formation. It appeared that the ancient runes were not meant to seal these terrifying forces, but were instead prepared to activate them. Rumble! As the runes attached, the four giant elemental pillars suddenly began to contract toward the center. Under the influence of the rune power, they twisted into various shapes, like dough being kneaded, constantly changing form until finally, the runes tightly enveloped them, forming four immense giants. They donned battle armor made from the ancient runes, each displaying the power of the element they represented. The four giants of water, fire, wind, and thunder stood at the corners of the platform, making the vast area suddenly feel cramped. This was not just due to the terrifying size of the elemental giants, but also because of the fearsome aura they emitted. The runes on their bodies corresponded with those on the platform, as if they were the overlords of this place. Their terrifying presence seemed to warn anyone who entered that they would face their destructive power. Roar! The four elemental giants suddenly roared, unleashing an invisible wave that included an attack on the primordial spirit. If one were not well versed in this aspect, a single encounter could cause injury. Fortunately, Jiang Chengxuan's mind was protected by the vast heaven divine Jade, which fluctuated and nullified this first wave of attack, sparing him from immediate harm. Yet the formidable nature of these four giants made Jiang Chengxuan take the situation even more seriously. He hadn't expected that beyond their powerful elemental forces and Tao rules, they would also possess primordial spirit attacking capabilities. If it weren't for the divine Jade's protection, he might have found himself in a dire situation. The destructive power of the elements combined with primordial spirit attacks, especially coming from four giants at once, presented a scenario of unimaginable terror. Moreover, this was only the second wave of danger he had encountered in the immortal cave abode. Compared to the meteor shower, this was far more perilous. Indeed, the immortal cave abode was no easy place to navigate, filled with both great opportunities and grave dangers. The meteor shower might have seemed easier, possibly because its true dangers had not fully emerged before Jiang Chengxuan had managed to escape. But with these four elemental giants, there was no avoiding the confrontation. Now the only option was to fight. Fortunately, having emerged from the meteor shower with the help of heavenly calculation techniques and without expending too much energy, Jiang Chengxuan felt somewhat prepared. Otherwise, he would likely be facing even more significant difficulties. Despite the terror of the four elemental giants, Jiang Chengxuan was not an easy opponent either. He found the situation challenging but not overwhelming. "Come on then, let's see what else you've got, immortal cave abode," Jiang Chengxuan shouted, his fighting spirit blazing as he addressed the void above. The four elemental giants then launched a ferocious attack. Upon the ancient platform, the elements gathered, their energies chaotic under the influence of the four colossal beings. The elemental giants stepped forward, each stride resounding like the beating of war drums. Where the fire elemental giant passed, the ground turned into a boiling lake of magma, with volcanic fire surging as fountains of molten lava erupted, scorching the earth. The wind elemental giant wielded the power of the wind Tao, surrounded by towering tornadoes, akin to a deity controlling the storms of legend. The territory traversed by the water elemental giant quickly transformed into a marshy land, a chaotic muddy zone saturated with the powers of the water Tao, which could stagnate everything. The thunder elemental giant carried rolling thunderclouds and lightning, darkening the skies and casting the world into alternating light and shadow. In mere moments, the four elemental giants converged on Jiang Chengxuan from four directions, tightly sealing him in and simultaneously pressing down with their terrifying elemental powers. Flanked by the giants, Jiang Chengxuan seemed like a flickering candle in the wind, his life hanging by a thread. The fire elemental giant took the lead, its body manifesting an infinite realm of fire. A molten lava fist swept across the void, aimed at Jiang Chengxuan with terrifying force. Following closely, the thunder elemental giant opened its massive palm, accumulating countless bolts of lightning into a pool, then hurled it forward, transforming into a torrential tide of thunder that covered the sky and pounded toward Jiang Chengxuan. On one side was the endless domain of fire, and on the other, a sky-obscuring tide of thunder. With both elemental giants attacking simultaneously, Jiang Chengxuan found himself in an inescapable peril, caught in a desperate situation. The fire and thunder elemental giants, wielding powers and rules at the level of the Tao Masters, essentially meant that Jiang Chengxuan was facing the assault of 4 Tao-level powers alone. A daunting scenario considering he had only entered the realm of the Tao a few hundred years ago. The disparity in strength on paper had reached a terrifying extent, making this trial seem more like an execution than a test. Only in an immortal cave abode would one find such daunting challenges. Despite Jiang Chengxuan's vast experience, this was his first time facing 4 enemies at Tao Mastery simultaneously. In this moment, his state of being was honed to its peak. As the fiery fist of the fire elemental giant bore down, Jiang Chengxuan instantly manifested the power of the Samsara Tao. A colossal hand, twisting through the void and imbued with the endless power of Samsara, appeared out of nowhere, striking back with a palm. The collision in the void between the fist and the palm was explosive, the terrifying clash of forces immediately triggering an explosion. The Samsara Tao erupted instantly, containing the expanding celestial fire within its cycles, firmly locking it within the wheel of Samsara. Under the suppression of the hand of Samsara, the fire elemental giant, as if its lifeline had been grasped, was immobilized. But at that moment, the rolling tide of thunder was already roaring beside Jiang Chengxuan's ear. Countless bolts of lightning, each several yards thick and radiating intense heat and blinding light, carried a destructive aura and struck towards Jiang Chengxuan's back. If this attack were to connect, at the very least, it would result in severe burns and possibly a charred body, not to mention the hidden attacks on the primordial spirit contained within the thunder. At this critical moment, a burst of 5-colored light suddenly erupted behind Jiang Chengxuan. The 5 elements annihilation light, flowing out like a torrent from his back, intertwined and formed a barrier of the 5 elements. This barrier, once manifested, collided fiercely with the tide of thunder unleashed by the thunder elemental giant. The elements cycled through creation and destruction, the forces of the rules indestructible, blocking all the thunder. Massive bolts struck the barrier, rebounding upon impact, then continuously bombarded it, colliding fiercely with the reflected thunderous forces. In an instant, countless explosions occurred between the barrier and the thunder tide, the destructive forces resonating through the void, causing the entire vast platform to tremble intensely. These 2 clashes, although complex and terrifying, actually occurred in just a few breaths. From the initial assault of the 2 Tao-level elemental giants to Jiang Chengxuan's counterattacks, everything unfolded in the blink of an eye. Rumble! Both elemental giants were forced back by the aftermath of the exchange, while Jiang Chengxuan took a deep breath and spread his hands wide, once again expanding the 5 elements samsara world. Because in the next moment, the water and wind elemental giants simultaneously unleashed their attacks. The wind elemental giant swept its hands across the void, and instantly, endless gales arose, blowing it high into the air. Then it transformed into a colossal tornado that spiraled down towards Jiang Chengxuan from above. Simultaneously, the water elemental giant clapped its hands onto the ground, and the force of the water Tao immediately infiltrated the ancient platform. Jiang Chengxuan felt a flash of blue light underfoot, followed by a sticky, obstructive force suddenly adhering to him. Furthermore, blades made of water, sharp enough to cut through metal and stone, shot out from the water elemental giant, slicing through the void and creating a long rift as they headed straight for Jiang Chengxuan. In an instant, the 2 elemental giants coordinated their attacks, crafting a lethal trap for Jiang Chengxuan. From above and below, from front and back, the 4 directions were sealed off by their simultaneous onslaught. These 4 elemental giants not only possessed Tao mastery level power and rules, but also demonstrated combat instincts to match, making them incredibly formidable and nearly insurmountable opponents. Such ancient powers could only create such magical, yet terrifying beings. At this moment, however, Jiang Chengxuan had no time to ponder further. As he maximized the expansion of the five elements samsara world to its limits, the frontal assault from the water elemental giant's giant water blade crashed down, triggering a terrifying explosion. Following closely, the massive tornado from above, carrying furious energy, turned the surrounding area into a vacuum, bearing down with overwhelming force. This attack, due to the obstruction from the water elemental giant, was something Jiang Chengxuan had to face head-on. He roared in defiance, summoning the five elements universe diagram, from which brilliant five-colored light surged forth. The golden void sword appeared in his hands, and with a sweeping motion, he slashed out. A beam of light that surpassed all others filled the area, making even thunder and celestial fire pale in comparison. The golden void sword manifested infinite sharpness, the power of the metal Tao pushed to its extreme, clashing fiercely with the similarly sharp and cutting wind Tao. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A grating noise filled the area as two sharp wills battled relentlessly in the void. The golden void sword seemed to pierce through the cosmos itself, its sharpness unyielding as it charged into the massive tornado. Within that swirling vortex, countless wind blades slashed at the sword, making its advance incredibly challenging. However, Jiang Chengxuan was not content with this deadlock, as he was aware that he wasn't just battling the wind elemental giant. The fire and thunder elemental giants he had previously repelled were gathering their strength again, poised to rejoin the fray. Sparked by a flash of insight within his consciousness, Jiang Chengxuan launched an invisible piercing strike that followed the trajectory of the golden void sword, plunging deep into the heart of the great tornado. Roar! The primordial spirit of the wind elemental giant was struck by this piercing attack, eliciting an enraged howl from the beast. The concentrated storm forces around it momentarily slackened, providing Jiang Chengxuan with a crucial opening. Seizing this chance, the golden void sword broke through the layers of wind resistance and struck the shoulder of the wind elemental giant. Rumble! The sword shattered the giant's body, causing a massive tempest to erupt. Countless gusts of wind burst from the gruesome wound, forcefully pushing the golden void sword back. Yet the injury did not heal, and the wind elemental giant, clutching its shoulder, swiftly retreated. To the astonishment of all, the first to be wounded in the onslaught of the four elemental giants was one of their own. Under the assault of four Tao mastery powers, Jiang Chengxuan had managed to inflict the first damage, showcasing his formidable battle prowess. However, instead of pursuing the injured wind elemental giant, Jiang Chengxuan refrained from chasing as the fire and thunder elemental giants were once again advancing towards him. With a flick of his fingers, he recalled the golden void sword to his side, preparing a defensive perimeter around himself. This instantly broke the water elemental giant's binding attack. He then saw the fire elemental giant transform its arms into two enormous spears of flame, piercing through the void, targeting Jiang Chengxuan's head with devastating power. The attack was like twin meteors striking from the heavens, the aura of destruction overwhelming. But at the critical moment, Jiang Chengxuan caught the fiery spears with a grasp of his hand, deploying the samsara palm once again to block the attack, holding the flaming spears within his grasp. Simultaneously, the thunder elemental giant launched its attack from behind him. 9 enormous thunder orbs appeared, rotating slowly around the giant. Driven by the rule of thunder, each orb transformed into a different mythical beast, roaring as they charged towards Jiang Chengxuan. These beasts, resembling dragons, tigers, snakes, eagles, wolves, and leopards, were wreathed in devastating thunderbolts. The thunder, so dense it was nearly black, was terrifying to behold. Facing the assault of 9 thunderous beasts, Jiang Chengxuan could only wield the golden void sword, slashing repeatedly through the void to fend them off. At that moment, a surge of water roared up. The water elemental giant had gathered a massive dragon of water rule, which obscured the sky and rushed toward Jiang Chengxuan with crushing force. The situation was once again dire as the 3 Tao mastery elemental giants attacked simultaneously, unleashing power that was simply too terrifying to withstand. Moreover, as beings of pure elements, they had a deeper understanding and mastery of their respective rule, basing their attacks on an endless well of dharmic power. This was destined to be a grueling battle. As the combined attacks of the 3 elemental giants neared, Jiang Chengxuan made a shocking decision in the split second before impact. He withdrew the golden void sword, the samsara hand, and the 5 elements samsara world, as if resigning to his fate and waiting for death. The gigantic fiery spear, the ferocious thunder beasts, and the roaring water dragon arrived in an instant. Regardless of Jiang Chengxuan's surrender, a merciless onslaught awaited him. They were the will of the immortal cave abode. Rumble! The terrifying elemental rule exploded in that moment, and the triple force of the Tao mastery attacks was about to strike Jiang Chengxuan. In the critical moment, as the elemental giants closed in, Jiang Chengxuan finally acted decisively. Within a breath, a profound and mysterious power burst forth from within Jiang Chengxuan's mind, a brilliant light akin to the dawn of creation itself, emanating from the seed of the creation Tao. Under the influence of this power, all the rules within Jiang Chengxuan reached their zenith. The five elements and the samsara Tao enveloped the entire world in an instant. The samsara Tao operated at its ultimate limit, with the five elements Tao continuously supporting it. The mighty, ancient, and dominant will of the samsara manifested in Jiang Chengxuan's hands. The entire cosmos seemed to reverse and overturn in that moment, affecting both space and time. The destructive attacks from the three elemental giants were thrown into chaos under the overwhelming power of the samsara Tao. Despite their substantial elemental intelligence, the giants were momentarily at a loss on how to contend with such complex circumstances. After all, though they possessed significant wisdom, they were still bound constructs of the immortal cave abode, lacking true experience and adaptability. Faced with this upheaval, the giants acted erratically, their formidable powers clashing uncontrollably. The fiery spear, driven by the Tao of celestial fire, lost control and veered towards the water elemental giant's summoned water dragon. At the same time, the water dragon, infused with the potent water rule, surged with terrifying force toward the fire elemental giant. The 9 thunderous beasts, embodying destructive thunder, plunged into disarray and attacked the water elemental giant. Thunder exploded, lighting up the sky with blinding electricity and flames. In an instant, all 3 elemental giants were hit by each other's attacks, suffering significant damage. The pure elemental forces, naturally repelling each other, exacerbated the devastation to the elemental constructs. All of this unfolded precisely as Jiang Chengxuan had calculated. In a moment of extreme peril, his only option was to make a bold move, and fortunately it paid off. The fire elemental giant was struck by the water dragon, its body pierced through, leaving a gaping hole. The water elemental giant was similarly devastated by the ferocious thunder rule. The intense heat and electricity set off a horrific explosion, shattering its rune-encrusted armor. Both giants fell in the fierce blast, causing the ancient stone platform to tremble with the impact. Wild elemental forces unleashed a storm of elements around the platform, with lightning flashing and celestial fire rolling. The fall of 2 elemental giants caused significant chaos on the battlefield, turning around a previously dire situation in an instant. Both the water and fire elemental giants were severely wounded, while the thunder and wind giants also showed signs of decline. The 4 elements' power, originally complementing and enhancing each other, had fallen into complete disarray under the influence of the samsara Tao. This meant that even elemental beings would struggle to harness their powers here, leading to a further 10–20% decrease in the giant's strength. This unexpected boon was a welcome advantage for Jiang Chengxuan. Given that the trial area was limited to just 1 platform, but hosted 4 giants, each wielding different elemental powers, the violent forces were hard to contain, resulting in the chaotic outcome. Whether this was a deliberate design by the immortal cave abode or a loophole exploited by Jiang Chengxuan was unclear. As the fire and water elemental giants fell, Jiang Chengxuan did not waste the opportunity. Without any hesitation, he immediately pressed the attack. Holding the golden void sword in one hand and readying the 5 elements light with the other, he swiftly moved to confront the fire elemental giant. The giant's massive body, already pierced by a large hole from the water Tao, revealed a core of magma-like life force flowing within. These were the energies sustaining the giant's life, its Achilles heel. As Jiang Chengxuan approached, the fire elemental giant seemed to sense its impending doom and roared defiantly. A scorching gale swept over Jiang, making him feel as if he was standing in a volcano. However, such attacks were clearly insufficient to stop Jiang's killing move. With a single hand forming a spell, he unleashed the 5 colors annihilation light, transforming it into a multicolored blade that instantly pierced through the fire giant's core, severing its life source. As the life-giving energies were cut off, the fire elemental giant struggled in agony, eventually letting out a pained roar as it gradually turned into a statue of red stone. The ancient runes that maintained its form burst forth with dazzling light, dispersing into the surroundings. Only then did the remaining three elemental giants, unable to contain their rage, readjust their stances and launch a renewed assault on Jiang with their Dao mastery powers. However, their movements were clearly not as formidable as before due to their injuries. The elemental forces they unleashed were also noticeably weaker than before. Despite feeling some fatigue, Jiang Chengxuan appeared to remain in peak combat condition. Facing the onslaught of the three elemental giants, he did not retreat. Instead, he transformed the golden void sword into the deep earth halberd, wielding it with both hands to deliver a sweeping strike towards the giants. Behind him, the images of dragons and elephants emerged, with the Samsara Dao and five elements Dao manifesting and enchanting the halberd. At this moment, he unleashed a strike powerful enough to cleave the very void, the deep earth halberd bearing the weight of 1,000,000,000 tons, causing the air itself to crack and explode upon contact with the elemental giants. Rumble! A small sun seemed to explode in the void, releasing endless light and energy that overturned everything. A terrible storm erupted on the ancient platform, the entire area shaking under the impact of the strike. The water elemental giant, already critically wounded, could not withstand the force and was sent flying by the dragon elephant power. However, the strike did not stop there. After sending the water giant flying, the momentum of the deep earth halberd continued unabated, sweeping towards the wind elemental giant. The forces of the wind Dao and the five elements Dao collided around the fulcrum of the halberd, neither yielding, causing another massive upheaval in the void. Rumble! As Jiang Chengxuan engaged in fierce combat with the wind elemental giant, suddenly a surge of thunder exploded. Purple lightning formed a massive hammer in the hands of the thunder elemental giant, which it swung to shatter the void towards Jiang. The thick lightning, filled with terrifying destructive power, continuously erupted from the hammer, ravaging the void. The element of thunder, known for its supreme lethality, made this strike particularly potent, akin to the peak of Dao mastery. At a critical moment, right where the halberd and storm clashed, a massive explosion erupted, sending a powerful shockwave through the area. Jiang Chengxuan seized the opportunity, riding the wind to rise up, forcibly dodging the thunder giant's catastrophic blow. Moreover, this time as he dodged, Jiang Chengxuan did not unleash any power. He remained ready to strike. After their initial burst of energy, the three elemental giants entered a brief period of weakness. Jiang, with his acute perception, immediately seized this moment. Manifesting the Samsara Dao, he descended from the air, and once again, his deep earth halberd stirred up a ferocious torrent as he aimed a devastating overhead strike at the thunder elemental giant. This blow, imbued with the power to reverse Samsara, slammed forcefully onto the thunder giant's crown. The force of Samsara penetrated the giant's body, and with the colossal strength of the halberd, internal and external forces erupted in conflict. The clash of these forces abruptly severed the thunder giant's life source, eliciting a reluctant roar as its body electrified, pushing Jiang Chengxuan back. In its final moments, the giant concentrated all its remaining elemental thunder into its palm, preparing a devastating palm thunder strike aimed at Jiang Chengxuan, poised to unleash it. In a split second, Jiang Chengxuan tensed, ready to intercept this last desperate attack. However, just as he braced himself, the palm thunder spiraled out of control, blasting into the void instead of its intended target. The thunder giant, its energy depleted and control lost, solidified into a statue of purple stone and crumbled. With the thunder giant's fall, only the water and wind giants remained, both barely clinging to existence on the ancient platform. The incredible battle that had seen Jiang Chengxuan facing off against four formidable Dao mastery beings had now decisively tipped in his favor. In terms of single combat prowess, the elemental giants were no match for Jiang Chengxuan, especially with only the last two giants left standing, undoubtedly heralding Jiang Chengxuan's victory. The subsequent fight lacked suspense as both the water and wind giants were gravely injured. Facing the still dominant Jiang Chengxuan, defeat was inevitable for them. Under these circumstances, with the elemental giants, limited combat thinking, there was no possibility for a turnaround. Days later, atop the ancient platform, there was no longer any sign of the elemental forces erupting. Jiang Chengxuan was sitting cross-legged at the very center of the platform, slowly regulating his breath to restore his dharmic power. Around him, the statues of the four elemental giants stood towering, They retained expressions of agony from their moments of defeat, some roaring towards the heavens, others kneeling on the ground. The statues of the elemental giants, each glowing faintly in shades of red, blue, green, and purple, stood as silent witnesses to the battle that had occurred. Phew, this immortal cave abode really gets more and more preposterous. I hope I haven't gone the wrong way, Jiang Chengxuan murmured after a moment as he slowly stood up. First, it was the meteorite array, and then the battle with the four elemental giants, each trial more challenging than the last. This likely meant that he was getting closer to the depths of the immortal cave abode, and perhaps others were heading there as well. However, the path ahead promised to be even more arduous and perilous. He could only hope that his friends and family wouldn't encounter any mishaps. In the next moment, Jiang Chengxuan reactivated his heavenly calculation technique, and a series of foreboding images flashed through his mind. This time, however, the power of the heavenly calculation technique could no longer predict a clear direction. It only indicated that fortune and disaster were intertwined. The immortal cave abode's power had ultimately influenced the heavenly calculation technique, suggesting that the dangers ahead required even greater caution. Nevertheless, Jiang Chengxuan's expression remained unchanged. He had long been prepared for all this, and he wasn't alone. The people of the Haoran sect were waiting for him. His resolve wasn't something that the dangers of the immortal cave abode could easily shake. Just then, an anomaly occurred on the ancient platform. The statues of the four elemental giants began to emit glowing lights in red, blue, green, and purple. Mysterious Tao powers radiated from within the statues, fully illuminating the space. The four elemental giants seemed as if they were about to come back to life, their presence magnificent and imposing. But just as Jiang Chengxuan readied himself to strike first, anticipating another battle, the four elemental statues suddenly began to crumble. Under Jiang Chengxuan's watchful eyes, the four massive statues, which reached the skies, started to disintegrate from the edges, dissipating into countless specks of light like bursting bubbles. At that moment, the world around them turned into a sea of glowing lights, with waves of red, blue, green, and purple swirling beautifully, akin to fairyland. The powers of the Tao of fire, water, wind, and thunder began to manifest, creating a spectacular scene in the four corners of the void. Soon after, four fruits, each emitting a misty light, appeared in the original locations of the four giants, quietly floating there. This surprise brought a mixture of shock and joy to Jiang Chengxuan. It seemed this trial ground was indeed a place where great danger coincided with great opportunity. Jiang Chengxuan soared up and collected the red, blue, green, and purple fruits. These fruits, brimming with pure Tao power, felt very familiar to him. They were evidently akin to the samsara Tao fruits he had been awarded before by the system. Each of these fruits represented the attributes of the four elemental giants: water, fire, wind, and thunder. Perhaps they should be called the four elemental Tao fruits. Jiang Chengxuan understood that consuming these four Tao fruits would allow him to comprehend the Taos of fire, water, wind, and thunder. Such a tremendous effect was indeed worthy of the immortal cave abode's reputation and the difficulty of the trials he had faced. The power of these Tao rules was something only Tao integration cultivators possessed. Without a doubt, these four Tao fruits could allow a cultivator to break through to the Tao integration realm. Such fruits could elevate the core power of a sect by a significant margin, as Tao integration cultivators were influential figures capable of governing territories within any sect. If these Tao fruits appeared in the floodgate realm, they would likely cause a bloody storm. Holding the four Tao fruits, feeling the surge of profound Tao power within, Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but feel elated. However, at this moment, he decided not to consume or refine them immediately. His current balance of the five elements Tao and the samsara Tao was at its peak, and disrupting this balance hastily wasn't wise. Moreover, the benefits of fire, water, thunder, and wind Taos weren't substantial enough for his current level, and refining them would take considerable time, a luxury he couldn't afford right now. Considering all factors, Jiang Chengxuan chose to store the Tao fruits for now, planning to deal with them later. Just then, Jiang Chengxuan sensed a powerful surge of dharmic power not far from his location, a force so formidable that it made even him feel alarmed. The world around the ancient platform had opened up following the complete dissolution of the four elemental giants, allowing access to distant realms. Determined to investigate the source of the disturbance, Jiang Chengxuan reactivated his heavenly calculation technique. After confirming that the omens did not suggest an immediately lethal threat, he decided to explore the source of these powerful fluctuations. Such disturbances could indicate the presence of other cultivators from different sects entering the area or could attract them. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan transformed into a beam of light and sped towards the location of the disturbance. After swiftly traversing the distance, Jiang Chengxuan soon arrived at the epicenter of the tumultuous dharmic power fluctuations. What he first saw was a space marred by devastation, with terrifying forces of Tao at work that painted a scene of cataclysmic power. The sight sent shivers through Jiang Chengxuan, prompting him to push his heavenly calculation technique to its limits and keep his presence entirely concealed. After waiting briefly to ensure no immediate threats emerged, he proceeded cautiously forward. The terrifying fluctuations continued intermittently, showcasing their formidable strength. As he approached, Jiang Chengxuan discovered the source of the disturbance, two ancient beasts locked in fierce combat. Both creatures occupied vast expanses of space, colossal as stars, their bodies radiating divine light and Tao energies. Their clashes manifested entire worlds, only to shatter them the next instant. To Jiang Chengxuan's astonishment, both beasts exhibited the terrifying power of level 9, equivalent to Mahayana. Even for someone as experienced and knowledgeable as Jiang Chengxuan, being this close to a battle between Daelords was heart-pounding. It was no wonder the immortal cave abode was said to be inaccessible to those below the level of Tao mastery. The dangers here were truly formidable. Wave after wave of powerful fluctuations erupted, causing a relentless storm to surge through the void. In such a situation, Jiang Chengxuan acknowledged his limitations and maintained a distance, utilizing the aura of heavenly fate deduction to conceal himself as he observed from the shadows, hundreds of miles away. Although termed as hundreds of miles, this proximity was already daringly close. The combatants were two mighty beasts with the strength of Mahayana Daelords. Even without employing their divine powers, the residual effects of their battle could typically affect areas hundreds of miles wide. An ordinary cultivator, without any means of concealment, would likely have been affected by the fallout and subsequently discovered, a consequence that did not bear thinking about. It was only by leveraging the almost cheating ability of heavenly fate deduction that Jiang Chengxuan could safely observe the battle from this distance. This doesn't seem like a trial but rather a clash with native beasts of this immortal cave abode. Jiang Chengxuan muttered to himself as he analyzed the terrifying scene before him. He had not encountered any ancient ruins along the way, nor was he restricted from leaving after arriving here. This confirmed that he was in a regular area of the immortal cave abode, and not in some trial zone. He could leave whenever he wished, a realization that somewhat eased his mind. However, the reason behind the fierce battle between these two formidable beasts, turning the sky dark and the earth dim, piqued Jiang Chengxuan's curiosity. In the absence of immediate danger, he preferred to continue observing. Perhaps he could benefit from their conflict as the proverbial fisherman who reaps the rewards of a fight between two others. Logically, beasts capable of reaching the 9th level and achieving Mahayana Daelord strength, monstrous in their own right, possessed high intelligence and were no less sentient than human cultivators. Such beings wouldn't engage in such a battle without a significant reason, nor was this a territory dispute as two tigers cannot share one mountain. What then could have drawn two 9th-level beasts to this location to fight so ferociously? This was a question worth pondering. Jiang Chengxuan was convinced there was more to this situation than met the eye. Perhaps a great opportunity lay hidden here, enticing these two powerhouses to battle fiercely. The forces unleashed in the battlefield were already beyond the realm of ordinary cultivators, reaching the levels of Mahayana. Such power was not merely for intimidation or testing. Both adversaries were fighting with full force, aiming to either drive off or slay the other. And the more intense the battle became, the more Jiang Chengxuan's heart raced. He focused intently on the battlefield, observing every technique and strategy employed by the two 9th-level beasts. Every piece of information gathered now could later aid in his quest for treasures. Though 9th-level beasts were not immortal, Jiang Chengxuan believed that, with the right opportunity, even these formidable creatures could be vanquished. He had more than one ace up his sleeve that reached the Mahayana realm, and he had previously faced such threats, albeit with the help of Qin Shenwu's talismans to drive the adversaries away. Even his Shifu, Qin Shenwu, had defeated a Mahayana Dailord from the Kyankan Hall on the very day he achieved Mahayana. To other cultivators, Mahayana Dailords might seem invincible, but in Jiang Chengxuan's experience, they were merely higher-level cultivators who could also face defeat. This perspective set those born in powerful sects apart from ordinary cultivators, giving them a broader vision and, consequently, more opportunities. Now, Jiang Chengxuan was seizing such an opportunity. Even though he was merely at the Tao Mastery, he was audaciously planning how to capitalize on the battle between two Mahayana Dailords. To any other cultivator, such a notion would seem ludicrous, akin to seeking death. But for Jiang Chengxuan, it represented an unmissable chance. He had the capability and the experience to strategize against two Mahayana Dailord-level enemies here. At this moment, as the two colossal beasts battled to their peak capacities in the void, their clash was an incredible spectacle to behold. One of the ninth-level beasts, resembling a fusion between a deer and a tiger, stood on all fours, its body bristling with enormous spikes that glinted with a mesmerizing light. With every movement, spikes as large as mountains thrust forward from the void, targeting its adversary with silent and deadly precision. These spikes, infused with the power of Mahayana Tao principles, were invisible and lethal, embodying the essence of void or spatial laws, which manipulated unseen, fatal forces. Emerging from the formless void, these spikes clashed with the opponent's attacks, creating terrifying fluctuations of Tao principles that could ripple across thousands of miles. This was the very force that had drawn Jiang Chengxuan to this location. Opposite this spike-covered beast was another ninth-level creature, dragon-like in appearance with wings that could blot out the sun. With every beat of its wings, laws surged forth, causing even the void itself to tremble as if on the brink of collapse. Its prowess lay in manipulating energies akin to cosmic winds or vibrational forces. Under the constant oscillations of its wings, the otherwise lethal spikes could not even approach its vicinity. Both ninth-level beasts exhibited extraordinary power. As they conjured Tao rules around them, numerous minor worlds manifested and perished in the void. Roar! Their movements were rapid and elusive, despite their vast sizes comparable to celestial bodies. Each dodge was as swift as a flash of light. One beast excelled in the manipulation of void powers, while the other harnessed the energy of vibrations. The techniques displayed by both were so astounding that even Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but marvel at their prowess. Their battle caused continuous tremors in the void, akin to a harbinger of apocalypse for this world. At the peak of their fierce combat, the two massive creatures collided with a thunderous impact. A sweeping tail strike tore through the void, leaving a chasm-like trail in its wake. Chaos energies erupted from this breach, culminating in a colossal explosion that sent tidal waves of force sweeping across everything in its path. Jiang Chengxuan watched with growing alarm as the spectacle unfolded. The roars of the two ninth-level beasts seemed to pierce through the immortal cave abode, and each of their collisions was terrifying, as if intending to destroy everything in existence. Jiang Chengxuan had no doubt that if this battle were to occur outside the immortal cave abode, in the worlds beyond the realm of immortals, it would cause devastating destruction. Under such power, the foundation of a world could be likened to a thin wall, which could be obliterated with just a few encounters. The increasingly terrifying noise from the battlefield made Jiang Chengxuan involuntarily hold his breath. He condensed his perception to its limit, focusing only on the path he had used to arrive. He believed that such noise could likely be detected by most in the immortal cave abode, and it wouldn't be impossible for others or something else to come and observe. At such a time, he had to be extremely cautious. The possibility of mishaps must be completely eliminated. That was Jiang Chengxuan's character. Thus, at the edge of the ferocious battlefield of the ninth-level beasts, Jiang Chengxuan quietly waited, paying attention to both front and rear directions. However, after some time, he did not notice anyone else daring to intervene in the battle like him. After all, any sane person seeing this turmoil would run as far as possible, and even Mahayana Dailords would prefer to act cautiously rather than take unnecessary risks. Only a new generation cultivator like Jiang Chengxuan, who had the confidence and boldness, would do such a thing. Initially, this was also why Zhu Ping chose him to succeed as the master of the Haoran sect. Rumble. Between the battlefield, the clash of the two ninth-level beasts again set off a series of explosions. In this part of the world, the chaos energy leaking from holes in the void was becoming more prevalent, like a thick layer of dark fog, enveloping the battlefield and adding a terrifying atmosphere to the fight. Within the dense fog of chaos, the enormous bodies of the two ninth-level beasts appeared intermittently, occasionally with terrifying powers that resonated through the void like thunder. The fluctuations of the Tao within this area were growing stronger, even causing this part of the world to gradually distort. This signified that the battle between the two ninth-level beasts was becoming more intense and terrifying, possibly even to the point where one of them was getting injured and truly fighting tooth and nail. Lurking on the edge of the battlefield, Jiang Chengxuan had to activate some of his own rule powers to block the aftermath of the fight. Fortunately, the chaotic energy that filled the battlefield effectively concealed his presence, preventing him from being detected. Moreover, the two ninth-level beasts seemed to have completely lost their sanity, attacking and fighting frantically. This was something Jiang Chengxuan had not anticipated. He had thought that if one of them showed signs of injury, indicating a risk of falling, they might retreat. But the reality was that their battle fluctuations were becoming increasingly outrageous and terrifying. Under such circumstances, it was certain that one of them was getting injured, yet neither showed any sign of wanting to leave. This was very rare for ninth-level beasts. Just as Mahayana Dailords rarely decide life and death lightly, unless there was a blockade or a situation of life and death, those who had cultivated to this level of Tao Lords were not likely to fight to the death easily. But now, these two ninth-level beasts were completely defying this principle. Jiang Chengxuan's heart was undoubtedly filled with intense curiosity and shock. What could possibly drive two ninth-level beasts to battle to this extent? It surely couldn't be just because they found each other disagreeable. Perhaps there was some life-or-death feud. This possibility was exceedingly slim. Jiang Chengxuan was clear in his mind that there must be something significant here, something so substantial that it would compel Mahayana Dailords and ninth-level beasts to fight to the death to claim it. At that moment, an angry roar echoed through the air, and an extremely terrifying power suddenly burst forth, plunging the whole world into endless fluctuations. Even Jiang Chengxuan at the edge felt a change in color. In the midst of the dense fog of chaos, a terrifying fluctuation erupted, and then the void turned as tumultuous as boiling, scalding water, with countless black holes and extreme upheavals occurring. In that instant, Jiang Chengxuan knew what it felt like to be hit by his own reincarnation divine powers. His world seemed completely overturned, with no distinction between up and down. Space and time were confused by these terrifying fluctuations, as if a giant hole had appeared in the world. And this was just the aftermath of the explosion from the battlefield. It wasn't even aimed at Jiang Chengxuan, but the effect was already this terrifying. This powerful strike was undoubtedly from one of the ninth-level beasts, unleashing a deadly move in a moment of desperation. These ancient creatures had gone berserk. Their fight intensified to the extreme, each determined to annihilate the other, neither willing to relent until the death. As the shockwaves from the impact approached, Jiang Chengxuan was forced to manifest a fragment of his five elements reincarnation world to shield himself, taking cover behind a meteorite. Once the intense chaos subsided, Jiang Chengxuan cautiously re-emerged to observe the situation. The dense fog of chaos did not cease for a moment, continually swirling and billowing, with roars persistently echoing throughout this realm. Clearly, the battle between the two ninth-level beasts had reached a critical moment, with a monumental climax imminent. It was then that Jiang Chengxuan suddenly noticed something unusual. Far from the battlefield of the two ninth-level beasts, amidst the storm, a faint glimmer seemed to flicker. It appeared to be a small fruit tree, bearing fruits that shone like glass, almost ripe for picking. But the moment Jiang Chengxuan laid eyes on it, his attention was completely captivated. The glass-like fruits on this tree seemed to have an innate, intense attraction to life. Before noticing it, one might think it was just an ordinary object, barely worth a second glance. But once it caught your attention, you could no longer ignore its presence, its mystique. It was a natural rule of this fruit tree. If not for the terrifying commotion caused by the two ninth-level beasts, which even drew in numerous streams of chaotic energy, Jiang Chengxuan might have passed by without ever noticing the tree's existence. In that instant, with just one glance, Jiang Chengxuan felt the power contained within those glassy fruits. The impact of such a fruit, he instantly understood everything about it, the reason for all that was happening here. This was none other than the legendary ninth-level spiritual fruit, a consumable that could enhance the cultivation of a Mahayana Dailord. At the moment Jiang Chengxuan laid eyes on that ninth-level supreme spiritual fruit, even the increasingly terrifying aura of the battlefield was ignored. This incredibly precious fruit was the reason for the life-and-death battle between the two ninth-level beasts. It represented the greatest opportunity Jiang had seen since entering this immortal cave abode. The emergence of a ninth-level spiritual fruit is likely even rarer and more challenging than the emergence of ninth-level beasts. After all, while the fruit embodies rules, it lacks the capability to fight enemies or seize opportunities by force. Cultivating such a fruit to maturity relies solely on nurturing. This requires not only an exceedingly long period, possibly millions of years, but also a location conducive to its growth and a continuous supply of energy. The immortal cave abode perfectly provides these conditions and has remained hidden for millions of years until now, a fortunate coincidence indeed. Only a confluence of such coincidences and opportunities could lead to the maturation of this ninth-level supreme spiritual fruit at this moment. This explains why the two ninth-level beasts are battling to the death here, disregarding their millions of years of cultivation and their own lives, likely drawn by the imminent maturation of this fruit. Perhaps they had discovered the existence of this supreme fruit long ago and had waited countless years for this day. Now that it is finally bearing fruit, they would not easily relinquish it to anyone else. Faced with the allure of the ninth-level supreme spiritual fruit, Jiang Chengxuan also harbored thoughts of seizing it for himself. Consuming this fruit could advance a Mahayana Dailord's cultivation by the equivalent of millions of years of training, a terrifyingly powerful effect that even he, with his system, could not ignore. Now that he had discovered this fruit, there was no reason for him not to try to obtain it. If he missed this opportunity, Jiang Chengxuan was sure he would regret it countless times in the future. Hesitation now might even negatively affect his future path and resolve. He carefully observed the depths of the chaotic fog, where the two colossal creatures were fully engaged in a death battle. This was an excellent opportunity to benefit as the proverbial fisherman. After calculating all possibilities and running simulations through the heavenly calculation technique, Jiang concluded that he had about a 50% chance of success. For such a formidable opportunity, this was an exceptionally high probability, even higher than what the two ninth-level beasts might expect. After all, he was still hidden from view, and if discovered, his chance of success in snatching the fruit would likely be less than 10%. In an instant, he resolved to seize this opportunity. However, it was not yet time to make his move. At a crucial moment, Jiang remained patient rather than rash, which is the mark of composure in the face of significant events. Just then, within the chaotic fog, another tremendously powerful force began to gather, and a vast expanse of the void began to collapse, as if the world itself were crumbling. In that instant, Jiang sensed danger. The five elements samsara world spun rapidly, even activating the power of the creation Tao rules, pushing both sets of rules to their limits. Boom! The next moment, an immensely terrifying wave of energy burst forth, obliterating numerous domains of the void. This explosion, carrying the force of Tao rules, surpassed the limits of what a Mahayana Dailord could release. It was clearly the full-force collision of the two ninth-level beasts. Both beasts unleashed their most powerful attacks, attempting to decide the outcome in that instant and mercilessly kill their opponent. The impending maturity of the supreme spiritual fruit made them desperate to repel their foe, regardless of the cost. This fruit held extraordinary significance for them, far more than for Jiang Chengxuan. They were native creatures of the immortal cave abode, with all their cultivation resources coming from within it. They were reluctant to leave the immortal cave abode for the outer world, knowing that while leaving might be easy, returning without special means would be nearly impossible. The resources outside could never compare to those within the immortal cave abode, which is why they were loath to leave. Opportunities within the immortal cave abode must be seized. They are not freely given. Limited opportunities meant they had to be fought over, often to the death. Because of this understanding, each fight for opportunity between them was to the last breath, determining the victor. What these two ninth-level beasts did not anticipate was the silent entrance of an outsider into the immortal cave abode, and one among them was now lurking behind them, watching closely. Empowered by the seed of the creation Tao principle, Jiang Chengxuan's five elements samsara world successfully withstood the onslaught. Other than a slight heaviness in his chest, he sustained no injuries. His instincts were screaming, aware that the long-awaited moment to act was nearly upon him. But one last preparation was needed. Among Jiang Chengxuan's trump cards, there was one perfectly suited for the current situation. This card, once played, could increase his chances of success by at least another 30%. He reached into his robes and pulled out a bead that radiated an extraordinarily mysterious aura. It was a reward from the system, an advancement bead. The effect of this bead was to instantly elevate a heavenly spiritual treasure to the rank of an arcane treasure. With the critical moment at hand, Jiang Chengxuan intended to use the advancement bead to promote his intrinsic spiritual treasure, the five elements diagram, to an arcane treasure. Possessing a weapon transformed into an arcane treasure would officially grant him the power to harm a Mahayana Dailord. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan activated the bead. A point of spiritual light burst forth from his forehead as he summoned the five elements diagram. Under the influence of the advancement bead, the five elements diagram immediately began to unleash an immensely mysterious force of Tao rules, which slowly integrated into each component of the map. The map surged in power, breaking through its original limits. It continuously evolved through the transformations of the five elements, now as the golden void sword, now as the deep earth halberd, now as the yin-yang divine water jade, now as the eastern azure dragon flag, and now as the eternal sun furnace. In a single breath, it shifted through countless forms, perfectly distributing the power of the advancement bead into each transformation. Each variation ascended towards the level of an arcane treasure. The promotion of the five elements diagram to an arcane treasure was undoubtedly profound. The divine light of the five elements lingered continuously, with each of the treasures representing the five elements undergoing slow transformations. All these changes were concealed within the five elements samsara world, further masked by the chaotic battlefield, rendering them undetectable to the two battling ninth-level beasts who continued their desperate fight. In Jiang Chengxuan's palm, the power of the five elements diagram had surpassed its original limits, quickly approaching a new threshold and reaching the level of an arcane treasure. The original forms of the treasures each underwent significant transformations. The edge of the golden void sword now carried an extremely domineering layer of invisible fluctuations, capable of distorting the void and slicing through all Tao rules. The body of the deep earth halberd shone as deep and luminous as starlight, adorned with innumerable stars that were born and extinguished in cycles, adding a layer of rotational explosive power. Within the yin-yang divine water jade, besides the yin-yang divine water, an additional force of universal Tao rules had appeared, allowing Jiang Chengxuan to enter a spiritual form. The Eastern Azure Dragon flag now featured the totems of five-colored divine dragons, enabling it to manipulate the power of the five elements and greatly enhancing its ability to confound and trap enemies. The Eternal Sun Furnace also acquired the ability to command exotic flames, allowing for countless transformations of its contained flames, equally effective against all creatures. After manifesting its final transformation, the five elements diagram finally stabilized and successfully ascended to the rank of an arcane treasure. As Jiang Chengxuan's personal spiritual treasure, its promotion undoubtedly enhanced his strength once again. The promotion of the five elements diagram, which encompassed five different transformations, was akin to Jiang Chengxuan suddenly possessing five different arcane treasures. The boost to his combat power was terrifyingly immense. Holding the newly promoted golden void sword, Jiang Chengxuan cleared all distractions from his mind, purging any thoughts except for victory. He believed that he was destined to win this battle. Meanwhile, in the void, another terrifying wave of fluctuations erupted as the two ninth-level beasts unleashed another round of deadly attacks. This time, the already collapsing void was now just like a tidal wave, and the chaotic energy surged through every part of this world. In the midst of the darkness that had engulfed the void, numerous streams of chaotic energy coalesced into a miniature world, enveloping the two ninth-level beasts. This time, facing the oncoming aftermath, Jiang Chengxuan did not evade but stood up, wielding his arcane treasure. The sharp force of breaking the void shone forth, splitting the chaotic currents in two as they flowed past him. In the next moment, he channeled his energy through the golden void sword, transforming it into a sword chi that directly plunged into the chaotic world. With the newly promoted arcane treasure, the golden void sword, he silently blended into the chaos, and the figures of the two ninth-level beasts once again appeared before him. At this moment, both beasts were heavily wounded, showing signs of mutual destruction. The beast wielding the power of void space, covered in spikes, had many broken off, with gruesome wounds all over its body oozing purple blood, continuously corroded by the chaotic energy. The dragon-like beast controlling the laws of vibration was also faring poorly. The tearing force of the void had shattered most of its scales, and its huge tail was nearly severed, constantly emitting chaotic energy. Clearly, both creatures were fighting their last breath, even nearing death. However, in such a state, they still did not intend to cease fighting, looking to make one final, desperate attempt. Thus, Jiang Chengxuan assessed that these two ninth-level beasts, in fact, were not as feeble as they appeared. They still retained about 30% of their strength. After all, ninth-level beasts were not mindless beasts. This appearance was merely a ruse to deceive their opponent. But at this moment, Jiang Chengxuan no longer intended to merely observe. There was no time for prolonged uncertainties. Opportunities were rare, and he wasn't the only potential beneficiary. With two ninth-level beasts still retaining 30% of their Mahayana-level strength, and Jiang Chengxuan holding an arcane treasure, though tense, he was unafraid. He immediately used the yin-yang divine water Jade, consuming the contained yin-yang divine water. Instantly, his aura leapt to another level, reaching a peak state. As the two ninth-level beasts roared and collided once again, engaging in fierce combat, Jiang Chengxuan made his decisive move. The newly promoted Deep Earth Halberd was immediately deployed, evolving within the chaos to form a galaxy. Countless stars fell simultaneously, unleashing a force on par with the ninth-level beasts. The terrifying spectacle caught the two beasts completely off guard, their eyes wide with astonishment and panic setting in for the first time in a long while. Within the celestial cave, they knew of no other entity that could threaten them. Unexpectedly, at their most critical and weakest moment, such a powerful force had intruded into the battlefield. How could they not be terrified? Was there some unknown transformation within the celestial cave, or was this the incarnation of some powerful being? In an instant, myriad thoughts flooded the minds of the two ninth-level beasts. However, at that moment, Jiang Chengxuan's formidable technique struck towards the closest ninth-level beast. Roar! The void beast immediately roared in response. In a moment of desperation, it forcibly manifested the power of its Tao, creating countless spikes in the void that thrust towards the Deep Earth Halberd. Its strike released the power of a Mahayana at that instant, significantly weakening Jiang Chengxuan's attack. As expected, the two ninth-level beasts had indeed concealed their true strength, only revealing their full capabilities in a life-or-death moment. The suppression of the master's path by the Mahayana rules quickly became apparent. Although Jiang Chengxuan's attack was weakened, it remained unstoppable and utterly terrifying. After all, the Deep Earth Halberd, now an arcane treasure, was unaffected by the Mahayana rules. Rumble! A million falling stars clashed with the formidable spikes, setting off a series of horrific explosions. Each star collided and annihilated against the spikes, creating numerous miniature black holes. But ultimately, the Deep Earth Halberd, carrying the force of a million stars, broke through the void's blockade and struck fiercely upon the spine of the ninth-level beast. This strike shattered countless spikes on the beast's back, and the wounds that had been suppressed burst open violently, with blood flowing like rivers. Jiang Chengxuan, with a single decisive move, had managed to inflict serious damage on the ninth-level beast. With the Deep Earth Halberd now ascended to an arcane treasure, its strike was incredibly heavy. It cleaved through the chaotic fog, splitting open a deep abyss and stirring the entire massive chaotic microworld with its force. In that instant, a trench severing the sea of fog appeared in the void, where millions of stars fell, crushing the ninth-level beast beneath them. The collision of two supreme forces of Tao rule sent up dazzling lights that illuminated the entire universe. Under the enhancement of the arcane treasure and the yin-yang divine water, Jiang Chengxuan's Tao, although not surpassing that of the ninth-level beasts, matched them blow for blow. Despite the beast being in a grievously wounded state, achieving this was still unimaginable. It is well known that a Daolord stands far above that of the Tao Mastery. In the Floodgate realm, although there are many who hold the title of Tao Mastery Saint, very few break through to Mahayana, which underscores the value of Mahayana's capabilities. Those who attain Tao Mastery are invariably the result of immense resources and talent, yet even these factors don't guarantee a breakthrough to Mahayana. The element of chance, which is elusive and sought after, is also necessary. A Tao Mastery Saint, if not chosen by heavenly, has nearly no chance to break through to Mahayana. Doing so would be akin to defying the heavens. The power difference between a Dailord and one of Tao mastery is clearly enormous. Yet now, Jiang Chengxuan, still only a Tao mastery saint, was forcefully suppressing a 9th-level beast with the strength of a Dailord. Had there been other cultivators present, they would have been astounded. Roar! After the terrifying fluctuation, the heavily wounded 9th-level beast, though further injured, was not yet defeated. It roared, and the force of its Mahayana Tao rule manifested again, shattering the void. At that moment, Jiang Chengxuan felt extreme high-frequency vibrations around him. The next moment, a terrifying void of nothingness spread from the center of the 9th-level beast towards him, like a seismic rift in the void, arriving in an instant. This 9th-level beast was utterly enraged, and this strike was far more terrifying than any aftershock Jiang had previously felt. This massive rift of nothingness was the pinnacle of the beast's void Tao rule, a gateway to a realm of nothingness. If banished there, one would never return to their original world. Life cannot sustain itself in nothingness, making this move a lethal attack that kills upon contact. The appearance of this void rift made even the observing 9th-level dragon beast step back cautiously. It still wasn't planning to leave, not wanting to give up on the 9th-level supreme spiritual fruit. It had discerned Jiang Chengxuan's realm to be lower than its own, which incited its greed. Had a Dailord appeared to intercept, it would have fled, no matter how reluctantly. Boom, boom, boom. Facing the dread-inducing void rift, Jiang Chengxuan truly felt the terror of a Dailord's might for the first time. Yet his spirit did not falter. Instead, his will to fight and passion for battle soared. He manifested the 5 elements samsara world, gathering the 5-colored divine light in his hand, then releasing it as a 5-colored radiant torrent that surged towards the void rift. However, this time, his typically infallible 5-colored annihilation light had no effect within the void rift. It was swallowed by the void world, cutting off any connection with Jiang, rendering it ineffective. Jiang frowned at this outcome. The next moment the void rift reached him, forcing him to transform into a 5-colored escape light, hastily moving away. Yet the void rift pursued relentlessly, as if sentient, continuing its chase. This strike was indeed sinister, leaving Jiang momentarily without recourse. His Tao rule was insufficient to affect this void rift, and using the arcane treasure might mean not returning if he entered the rift. He had no choice but to navigate through the void, using the golden void sword to clear a path and continuously dodge. As the void rift expanded, the space became riddled with holes, leaving him nearly no room to retreat. Just then, an unforeseen and dramatic shift occurred. On Jiang's escape path, an immensely terrifying force erupted, radiating blinding divine light like a descending sun. This attack, also containing the peak power of a Dailord's Tao rule, undoubtedly came from the 9th-level dragon beast. Jiang was shaken. Did these 2 9th-level beasts have some sort of relationship? But the reality was different. Indeed, the 9th-level dragon beast had launched an attack against Jiang Chengxuan, and its attack was coordinated with the void rift, effectively cornering Jiang into a deadly trap, as if the 2 creatures had conspired together. However, it wasn't acting to assist its fellow beast. This attack was not only directed at Jiang Chengxuan, but also targeted the other 9th-level beast. In this critical moment, the dragon beast unleashed its most potent strike, aiming to eliminate both Jiang Chengxuan and the other 9th-level beast in one fell swoop, thus securing a decisive victory. This move was ruthlessly strategic and decisive. Jiang had anticipated that the dragon beast might either join the fray directly or flee the scene. He hadn't expected it to feign neutrality initially, only to launch a surprise attack aiming to achieve complete victory in one stroke. Even the other 9th-level beast had not foreseen this attack. Realizing it had no chance to contend for the opportunity after being injured by Jiang, it unleashed all its power in a spiteful strike, intent only on killing Jiang Chengxuan to avenge its humiliation, before planning to leave the battlefield and forfeit the supreme spiritual fruit. However, the dragon beast seemed to have anticipated this desperation, and instead of merely competing for the supreme fruit, it aimed to seize the fortunes of both Jiang and the other beast. Amidst the intensifying fluctuations, a terrifying blend of light and heat coalesced in the void. Right in front of the other 9th-level beast, an equally formidable sun burst forth with explosive force. Rumble! With a booming sound, the void suddenly displayed 2 artificial suns, their presence shockingly formidable. In that instant, the forces within that space went utterly berserk. The supreme power of the void rift, the supreme true sun fire created by intense fluctuations, and the chaotic energy filling the void all collided. The three grand and supreme forces met in this space, causing an incredibly terrifying wave of energy that instantly burst forth, ripping the chaotic realm apart. Boom, boom, boom. The dreadful fluctuations and explosions completely dominated the area, sending shockwaves that were felt throughout the celestial cave. The apocalyptic scene lasted an indeterminate amount of time. When everything finally settled, only a void filled with chaos energy remained, with the searing true sun's fire still burning fiercely at the edges. The landscape was devastated, resembling a world that had been completely destroyed, barren of any life. In the void, only the silhouette of a dragon-like beast stood, undoubtedly the ninth-level dragon beast. Not far from it, the other ninth-level beast was barely clinging to life, nearly dead. Its body, though still exuding the deterrence of a Daelord, was utterly drained of power. The dragon beast's surprise attack had forced it to expend all its energy in defense, and the subsequent chain of events had pushed it to the brink of death. Its massive body lay wrecked like ruins, barely breathing as the ninth-level dragon beast approached. In the struggle for this opportunity, it was about to pay with its life, while Xianxia, the interloper it despised, seemed to have vanished into ash. The ninth-level dragon beast, without wasting words, used its power of the Daelord to deliver the final blow to its foe. A ninth-level beast thus fell, its Tao rule dissipated, manifesting as a sorrowful cry from the heavens, and the force of nothingness finally dispersed. Joy surged on the face of the ninth-level dragon beast, for it had not only eliminated its opponent, but also seized the chance to claim the supreme spiritual fruit. Every part of a ninth-level beast is a treasure, and by consuming the corpse of the ninth-level beast along with the supreme spiritual fruit, it could potentially ascend to the immortal realm immediately. Such an opportunity was enough to drive it to ecstasy. But then an unexpected twist occurred. From the remnants of the void entrance, a blazingly intense golden light burst forth. Mixed with strange chaotic energy and multicolored divine light, different divine fires, like a comet from another world, swiftly struck towards the ninth-level dragon beast. This terrifying attack was unexpectedly from Xianxia, whom they thought had been obliterated. In a moment of life and death, Jiang had unleashed all his power and edged into the periphery of the void space, avoiding all damage. Now, with the ninth-level void beast fallen and its void force dissipated, Jiang decisively surged forth at full strength, bursting from the brink. This gamble was truly fraught with danger, a near brush with death. At the moment he was struck by the true sun's fire, he had summoned the eternal sun furnace, using countless exotic fires for protection. Afterward, leveraging the ascended golden void sword and his full power enhanced by the five elements' divine light, he clung to the edge of the void entrance, barely holding on. This move, from death to life, allowed him to escape from the fatal blows of the two ninth-level beasts, preserving all his strength. Such a gamble was risky. If the ninth-level void beast had not perished, he would have been lost to the void. Fortunately, this time, he had gambled correctly and emerged victorious. At this moment, Jiang unleashed the greatest power of his life, striking at the most relaxed and vulnerable moment of the ninth-level dragon beast. The outcome was predictable. The ascended golden void sword, now capable of slaying a Daelord, gathered all of Jiang's supreme power and mercilessly pierced the chest of the ninth-level dragon beast, shattering its heart. Even its Tao rule shattered under this strike, caught entirely off guard by this full-force attack. The ninth-level dragon beast, from extreme joy to despair, saw its face freeze in frustration and resentment. It did not achieve ascension, and in such a state there was no possibility of survival. In its last moments, it saw the figure of the human cultivator it had underestimated, Xianxia. His determination and resolve were evident until the end, the very reason he had survived and triumphed. Roar! The ninth-level dragon beast, despite all its schemes, died unwillingly alongside its opponent, both falling in this world. Only when the spectacle of the Tao fall unfolded did Jiang's mind finally settle. In this battle, facing two opponents of Daelord realm, he had survived by gambling with his life and turned the tables in a counterattack, winning in the end. This battle could be considered the pinnacle of his journey since entering Tao mastery, achieving what even a reincarnated immortal might struggle to accomplish, slaying 2 Daylord with the power of Tao mastery alone. The battle epitomized a culmination of countless coincidences, opportunities, and sheer survival instincts, all bound by his willingness to risk everything. In the wake of such a battle, even with Jiang Chengxuan's temperament, a sense of surreal achievement washed over him, as if living through a fantastical dream. After several moments of contemplation to calm his mind, he finally snapped back to reality, beginning to harvest the remains of the 9th-level beasts. These materials, capable of crafting arcane treasures, were more precious than any treasure he had encountered before. Now was the time to reap the rewards of his victory. The remains of the 2 9th-level spiritual beasts, rich in rare materials and treasures, along with the 9th-level supreme spiritual fruit tree, represented unparalleled opportunities that any Daylord would envy, even to the point of risking their lives. Such treasures, Jiang Chengxuan knew, could tempt even immortals who might stumble upon this scene to claim these powerful legacies for themselves. Seated amidst the ruins, Jiang pulled out arrays and elixirs to rapidly restore his condition. After some time, when he had regained about 70% of his peak strength, he truly allowed himself to relax. Now was the moment to collect the spoils of war. The materials and treasures from the bodies of the 9th-level spiritual beasts were not just rare, they were treasures unseen in ages. These, coupled with the 9th-level supreme spiritual fruit, constituted an unparalleled windfall. Such fortune, he mused, might well be the greatest opportunity of his life since acquiring the achievement system. Even with his stoic nature, Jiang felt a wave of dreamlike disbelief wash over him, as though he was living a fantastical dream. After several moments of centering himself, he finally set about harvesting the materials from the carcasses of the 9th-level beasts. These resources were crucial for refining arcane treasures and were more valuable than any loot he had previously obtained. Moreover, these resources served as the best evidence of his incredible victory, a testament to his supreme glory. Chapter 996, The Spiritual Fruit Acquired, New Visitors Arrives. In this desolate land, Jiang Chengxuan gleefully harvested his spoils of war. Though the 2 9th-level beasts did not carry their collections like human cultivators, their bodies were still treasure troves in themselves. Wielding the golden void sword, Jiang Chengxuan transformed into a merciless butcher, methodically dismembering the corpses of the 9th-level beasts. Take for example the 9th-level void beast, whose spikes resembled natural treasures of the void, akin to the arcane treasure, and whose bones and skin could be crafted into defensive treasures of the highest order. Similarly, the scales and the Tao rule-infused tail of the other 9th-level dragon beast were equally rare, each a treasure of heavenly stature. Other materials, such as the beast's eyes and marrow, needless to say, were top-grade materials for crafting pills and artifacts. In Jiang Chengxuan's hands, these resources could be utilized to their fullest potential. He didn't even need to trade or sell them or seek someone to refine them, as he himself was a master of weapon refinement and alchemy at the 8th level. The loot brought immense joy to his heart. With these resources, he no longer had to worry about future consumption. This trip to the immortal cave abode had fully replenished his stores of alchemy resources. Soon after, the remains of the 2 9th-level beasts were thoroughly collected by Jiang Chengxuan, leaving nothing to waste. He then traversed the chaotic space, pushing through layers of primordial mist, his heartbeat quickening with each step. These 2 beasts were merely an unexpected bonus. The true goal of his journey was the 9th-level supreme spiritual fruit. As Jiang Chengxuan stepped under the tree exuding a mighty life force, he immediately felt a harmony of Tao forces, and his injuries began to subtly heal. Merely standing under the shade of this 9th-level spiritual fruit tree demonstrated its formidable power. Looking up, he saw the 9th-level supreme spiritual fruit suspended in the middle of the tree, its mysterious Tao radiance continuously emanating in all directions. It resembled a splendid miniature star, surrounded by orbiting rings of light, displaying its immense power. Within it lay millennia of life essence, nurtured over eons by the immortal cave abode, and born with the purest essence of Tao. The purity of its energy was on par with the samsara Tao granted by the system. With anticipation and excitement, Jiang Chengxuan soared up and plucked the supreme spiritual fruit. In that instant, the world seemed to come alive, as if stirred by the departure of the supreme spiritual fruit. Holding it in his hand, Jiang Chengxuan felt an immense satisfaction and clarity of thought. This was the opportunity that even great Daylords coveted, now seized forcefully by him, bringing a surge of pride and confidence. Moments later, as Jiang Chengxuan stored the ninth-level supreme spiritual fruit, he contemplated his next steps. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the immortal cave abode in the outer domain space, a sudden anomaly occurred. Following the disappearance of the Haoran sect, Pantheon sect, Divine Shadow Gate, and the Limitless sect, this silent outer domain welcomed new visitors. Figures exuding domineering auras shattered the void of the outer domain and made a powerful entrance. These were forces from other sects of the Floodgate realm. Following the tracks of Jiang Chengxuan and others, a large group from the Floodgate realm entered the area. With the precedent set by Jiang and his companions, these newcomers quickly located the entrance to the immortal cave abode. Before long, this mighty group stood before the ancient gate that Jiang and his companions had recently passed. Their assembly was formidable, matching the combined strength of the four great sects. Among them, forces like the sacred skeleton sect and the ghost palace, notorious for their demonic paths, were present alongside the righteous sects like Xianxia Hall, Five Elements Heaven sect, and the Eternal Sword sect. Their mutual presence was unsurprising, evidently having reached some consensus beforehand. The leaders of these forces, needless to say, were all great Daelords. The sect ancestors and old demons, not typically inclined to emerge, were awakened by greed upon hearing of the immortal cave abode, and came forth with their disciples to seize this opportunity. With some deals made, even the ostensibly righteous sects like Xianxia Hall and Five Elements Heaven sect assisted the demonic forces to arrive here quietly. Indeed, this is an immortal cave abode. Sects like Haoran and Pantheon really harbored ulterior motives, attempting to secretly monopolize this grand opportunity. A great Daelord's angry voice echoed within the ancient hall. Clearly, the fact that they were not the first on the scene infuriated them. After all, every moment wasted meant a loss of tremendous resources. Even in the short time that had passed, the likes of Haoran sect might have already widened the gap between them, exacerbating the anxiety in those who already harbored reservations about Haoran sect. If there's a chance, show no mercy to anyone inside. This is between you and me. They surely have already gained much from this place. The ancestor of the sacred skeleton sect, shrouded in a gray robe, spoke ominously. And to these clearly heinous suggestions, no one objected, not even those from the so-called righteous sects. They simply pretended not to hear. It was clear there was a tacit understanding among them. The world of cultivation was never far from bloodshed, betrayal, greed, and conspiracy. The immediate priority is to figure out how to open this ancient gate, stated Daelord Southbright from the Xianxia Hall in a cold voice. Seeing that Qin Shenwu, who had once bested him, might find the opportunity to ascend to the immortal realm, his anxiety was greater than anyone else's. He cared for nothing else. His only desire was to thwart Qin Shenwu's path. This had almost become an obsession, verging on madness in his heart. As I said earlier, if I claim to have a way, then there will be a way, sneered a powerful figure from the side of the demonic. As for opening the ancient gate, these demonic forces indeed had some unique methods. After all, despite everything, the demonic sects had a long history that was no less prestigious than any other. Over thousands of years, various demonic forces might have been exterminated time and again, but they always managed to reinvent themselves and continue their lineages after colluding in disgrace. The demonic forces had long coveted certain special inheritances, always ready to meddle in various opportunities. As they say, thieves have their own ways, and that was precisely their approach. Despite being shunned and targeted by various forces, the demonic had managed to devise their own unorthodox and sinister methods for invading the restrictions of various caves. This time, the cooperation between the Xianxia Hall, the Five Elements Heaven sect, and the demonic forces included these services. They were not out of goodwill or brotherhood with the demonic forces, but purely out of mutual exploitation. After all, these forces, who pride themselves on their noble heritage from the higher realms, held disdain for the demonic forces at heart. "Let's start," commanded Daelord Southbright of the Xianxia Hall coldly, showing no interest in giving any face. This deprived the ancestor of the Ghost Palace of a chance to flaunt his power, causing him some displeasure. However, at this moment, they were all in the same boat, so it wasn't the time to voice complaints. Moreover, they all shared the sentiment of wanting to enter the immortal cave abode as soon as possible. Quickly, under the arrangement of the Ghost Palace and the Sacred Skeleton sect, A sinister altar appeared in the middle of the ancient hall, looking ominously dark and starkly contrasting with the grandeur around it. This sacrificial ritual uses the souls of the dead as substitutes for us, to confound the heavenly secrets and infiltrate this ancient gate. This is an ancient method passed down through our sects, requiring the expenditure of soul resources. Enough, we're not responsible for this. It was all clarified in the cooperation, interrupted a great Daelord from the Five Elements Heaven sect, as the Ghost Palace's ancestor was about to boast about their sinister methods. The atmosphere turned tense again instantly. The people from the Ghost Palace and the Sacred Skeleton sect looked grimly and coldly at those from the righteous sects. They had long heard of the corruption of Xianxia Hall and Five Elements Heaven sect, but hadn't expected these ostensibly virtuous people to be so blunt and disdainful. Forget it, it's pointless to talk more. Once we enter the immortal cave abode, life and death are in the hands of fate, declared the ancestor of the Sacred Skeleton sect, easing the tense atmosphere and allowing the ritual to continue. Following this, there was no more interaction. They silently began their invasion of the immortal cave abode. As the sacrificial ritual progressed, everyone felt an intense coldness enveloping them, as if millions of ghosts were clinging to their bodies. When the ritual peaked, a strange fluctuation shot out and blasted into the ancient gate. To their surprise, the mysterious ancient gate slowly opened a narrow, eerie green crack. "Quick, we only have the time for 10 breaths," shouted the ancestor from the demonic sects as they transformed into streaks of light, not hesitating to enter the crack. Seeing this, the people from Xianxia Hall and Five Elements Heaven sect cursed silently at the damned demonic forces. The method indeed only allowed for such a brief moment. Despite their suspicions and anger, the call to action and the deadly allure of the immortal cave abode left them no choice but to grit their teeth and follow through the crack. Buzzing sounds filled the air as one after another entered the gate. Moments later, the eerie green crack began to fluctuate violently. Just as the last figure entered the ancient gate, a terrifying wave of energy burst from within, instantly obliterating the sacrificial altar. Nevertheless, this group of unscrupulous, rule-breaking dark zealots had silently infiltrated the immortal cave abode. An invisible crisis was slowly brewing, looming over the members of the Haoran sect, the Pantheon sect, and other forces. Meanwhile, as the demonic forces breached the immortal cave abode, Jiang Chengxuan had already left the previous battlefield. After studying the 9th-level Supreme Spiritual Fruit Tree for several days, he successfully took it with him. He planned to plant it within the Haoran sect in the future, where it would surely become a treasure of the sect. Over the next few days, he continued to explore the immortal cave abode, passing through several trials and collecting treasures, though none as previous as before. During these days, he neither encountered Shen Ruyan and others nor any other cultivators from the Floodgate realm. Jiang Chengxuan could only resign himself to the vastness of the immortal cave abode. As he wandered, a sudden flicker of insight crossed his mind, signaling a premonition. As someone possessing the intuition of the heavens, he knew that the stirring in his mind was not unfounded. Something causally linked was undoubtedly affecting him at this very moment. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan calmed his spirit and expanded his spiritual sense to its fullest, initiating a heavenly calculation technique to probe the underlying currents. This time, deep within the immortal cave abode, his heavenly calculation technique reached unprecedented heights, swiftly hitting its limits. Previously, the cave's constraints had suppressed his divination abilities, but now they were fully unleashed. However, the divinations presented were exceptionally strange, showing a clear division between black and white, indicating a mix of life and death energies. This undoubtedly suggested that numerous and unpredictable changes were brewing, complicating any attempts to foresee the future. Not enough, let's employ the profound Tao disc, Jiang Chengxuan muttered to himself, dissatisfied with the vague results. With a single gesture, he summoned the profound Tao disc, a reward from the system that could break through the limits of heavenly calculation technique. Upon its activation, the power of destiny infused into his divination efforts. In an instant, gusts of cleansing wind swept through the divination images, each gust hastening the transformations and clarifying the images further. The initially chaotic black and white swirls slowly morphed, eventually stabilizing into an image depicting both yin and yang, half light, half shadow. Half-life, half-death, Jiang Chengxuan whispered, deeply shocked by this divination outcome. What could possibly happen within the immortal cave abode to suggest such grave danger? Especially considering that he was not currently undergoing any trials, this clearly indicated that some external threat, not part of the trials, was drawing near. A premonition struck Jiang Chengxuan almost immediately, suggesting only one type of peril that could correspond to such a dire omen. Facing the ominous results of his divinations, Jiang Chengxuan was cautious and slightly worried, yet he was not overly fearful. He continued his explorations within the immortal cave abode, unwilling to hide or cower. After all, not long ago, he had slain 2 ninth-level beasts, equivalent to 2 Mahayana Dailords. Having survived such deadly battles, there was little left in the world that could instill fear in him. He did not stow away the profound Tao disc, but continued to use it for his heavenly calculation technique, looking for a safer direction to proceed slowly and hopefully find Shen Ruyan and the others. Although he wasn't particularly frightened by the half-life, half-death divination, he was still very concerned about the safety of his companions. Jiang Chengxuan hoped to establish contact with others soon, to share the news of the changing conditions, and to prevent any unforeseen dangers. Given the already perilous nature of the immortal cave abode and the potential for additional complications, the situation was exceedingly risky. With the help of the profound Tao disc, 3 paths were revealed to him through his divinations. A location aglow with purple-golden light, indicating significant opportunity but also substantial risk. A place with billowing black-gray smoke columns, undoubtedly harboring great danger, likely the territory of another 9th-level mystical beast. A gray-white area, filled with mystery and the unknown, which even the enhanced heavenly calculation technique could not penetrate. Intuitively, Jiang Chengxuan felt drawn to the mysterious gray-white area, believing that it held a significant opportunity meant specifically for him. Deciding on his next course of action, he put away the profound Tao disc and pondered deeply. The first location, though promising, was explicitly dangerous and thus unsuitable given the current circumstances. Already endowed with considerable fortune from his previous encounters, he felt no need to seek further peril. He was convinced that no opportunity within the cave could rival the treasures he had already acquired from the 2 ninth-level beasts and the supreme spiritual fruit. His goal now was to avoid danger and seek fortune prudently. Thus, he could easily discard the first and second options. His intuition and deliberations pointed in one direction. Resolved, Jiang Chengxuan transformed into a 5-colored light and flew towards the third location, the mysterious gray-white area. Days later, after traveling tens of thousands of miles without incident, Jiang Chengxuan found the cave's vastness and grandeur somewhat frustrating. Though called a cave, it was as large as a complete world. The scale of the ancient immortals' creation was terrifying. Not only had they crafted such an immense world out of nothing, but they had also perfectly balanced its various resources and rules. What impressed him most was that the immortal cave abode was established in an outer domain, perhaps deliberately arranged by the ancient immortal. At that moment, the world ahead finally began to change noticeably. A dense fog lay thickly on the horizon like a towering wall connecting the heavens, blocking everything from the outside. The fog, distinctly gray-white, matched the description from the heavenly calculation technique. Jiang Chengxuan accelerated, reaching the edge of the dense fog in an instant. Here, a profound and mysterious aura flickered in and out of perception, eluding even his intuition. Facing this situation, Jiang Chengxuan did not rush in. Instead, he used various means to probe the fog. He retrieved some treasures from his storage and set up a detection array on the spot, using the eyeball of a 9th-leaf beast as the focal point of the array. This array, known as the void-breaking observation array, was an 8th-level array capable of granting the user a celestial perspective, allowing them to see everything within 100 miles as if through the eyes of the heavens. However, as the void-breaking observation array activated, massive waves of energy spread through the void. Jiang Chengxuan, though his eyes were closed, felt the world before him shrink down to the size of a sand table in his mind. Yet under the influence of this array, the endless fog remained unmoved. Beyond seeing the area just beyond the fog, he could not perceive anything further. The 8th-level array had no effect on the vast expanse of fog. Although he had anticipated this, Jiang Chengxuan's expression grew more solemn after deactivating the array. He didn't give up, however. He then brought out a divine treasure, the vast heaven divine Jade, known for its ability to defend against primordial spirit attacks and illusions, which also proved useful for exploration. Channeling his dharmic power into his primordial spirit, he intensified his gaze, and a light shot out from his soul, illuminating the gray-white fog. This time, his vision, following this light, slowly penetrated the gray-white fog, inching deeper into its mysteries. Encouraged by this successful exploration, Jiang Chengxuan felt a surge of confidence. However, just as he was gaining clarity through the fog, an unexpected event occurred. As Jiang Chengxuan peered into the gray-white mist, mysterious runes began to subtly appear in his field of vision, startling him. He sensed something amiss around him and decided to withdraw, attempting to retract his spiritual power. But at that moment, he realized that a faint gray-white mist had already enveloped his surroundings. "Damn it," he cursed inwardly, sensing the urgency of the situation. With no time to hesitate, he unleashed all his power. The 5 elements diagram was summoned instantly, transforming into the golden void sword, cleaving through the void in an attempt to escape. A flash of golden light split the air as Jiang Chengxuan turned into a golden beam of light, shooting back along the path he had come. However, when he paused to survey his surroundings, he found to his dismay that he was still enveloped in the eerie gray-white mist. Despite his powerful escape attempt, he had not left the area at all. It became apparent that he had unknowingly entered deeper into the mist while trying to explore it, influenced by its mysterious properties. By the time he realized it, he was fully immersed, and his senses of direction and perception were thoroughly confused. His escape attempt had likely only taken him deeper into the heart of the mist. Deep within the dense gray-white mist, it seemed as if nothing else existed. No matter which direction Jiang Chengxuan looked, all he could see was the swirling fog. Facing this persistent mist, Jiang Chengxuan manifested the 5 elements samsara world, forcibly carving out a sanctified space around him. Fortunately, aside from impeding his departure and obstructing his view, the mist did not exert any other negative effects, such as weakening his Tao rules or damaging his primordial spirit. Jiang Chengxuan summoned a fire rule from the 5 elements, creating a blazing line of fire in the palm of his hand and casting it into the mist, expecting some reaction. Under normal circumstances, any type of mist would at least react to the flame, but the gray-white fog remained unaffected as if it didn't exist at all. This peculiar resistance left Jiang Chengxuan feeling uneasy, his expression turning grave. He subsequently tried various methods including primordial spirit attacks, the power of Tao rules and treasures to probe the mist, but nothing seemed to affect it. It appeared that this gray-white fog shared a mysterious similarity with the force of voidness, potentially originating from a higher realm, making it unreachable by the forces of this realm. The fog only seemed to stir when Jiang Chengxuan attempted to leave, flowing sluggishly as if clinging to him, causing even his brows to furrow tightly. If there truly was nothing within this fog and its sole purpose was to trap those who entered, the situation was indeed dire. He needed to find a way to influence the fog to reveal a path out. At that moment, a terrifying disturbance erupted from the heavens above within the endless fog. A force of immense power burst forth, its might equal to the lethal abilities of a ninth-leaf beast. Facing this sudden change, Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but cry out in frustration, for this was not the change he had desired. But then, without mercy, a fearsome attack descended instantly. Colors finally broke through the monotony of the fog as crimson lightning wildly streaked across the sky. Blood-red lotuses, like maple leaves blown by a fierce wind, emerged from the dense fog, rapidly descending towards Jiang Chengxuan's position. These blood lotuses were interconnected, forming a net that enveloped him. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan unleashed the 5 elements diagram, transforming it into the golden void sword and slashing horizontally across the space. The nearest blood lotus was cleaved in 2 under the invisible edge of the sword. Just as he prepared to strike the next lotus, the disruption caused by the split lotus made all the surrounding blood lotuses converge on him aggressively. These blood-red lotuses, tightly intertwined, seemed to strangle their prey until suffocation. Jiang Chengxuan felt a choking sensation as this wave of attacks, carrying the weight of great accomplishment, converged from all directions, leaving him no escape. "Samsara divine power, activate," he roared, just as the blood lotuses were about to engulf him. He pushed the power of Samsara to its peak. The Tao of Samsara erupted, distorting time, space, and everything around, causing the countless blood lotuses to pause momentarily. However, this was still not enough to escape the encircling net. With relentless determination, Jiang Chengxuan continued to unleash the power of samsara. Under the terrifying force, the blood lotuses began to change. Knots between the roots started to twist, pulling the lotuses together under the influence of samsara, mingling them into a chaotic explosion. Boom, blood-red explosions erupted, shaking the void and triggering a chain of reactions. The world turned blood-red as if descending into hell. Caught amidst it, Jiang Chengxuan had to rely on the 5 elements samsara to withstand the aftershocks. After weathering the initial assault, the damage from the residual impacts was significantly less than a direct hit. Had the blood lotuses exploded directly on him due to his reversal, the consequences would have been unthinkable. Rumble, yet, as he faced these challenges, another terrifying fluctuation began in the unreachable skies above, leaving him no respite. An overwhelming force, once again, swept down towards Jiang Chengxuan with the might of great accomplishment. Something massive forced the dense gray-white fog apart in the high sky, exerting a tremendous pressure. Jiang Chengxuan, without any hesitation, once again summoned the golden void sword. A dazzling burst of golden light suddenly exploded, and a colossal pillar, resembling a titanic hand, crashed down. Jiang Chengxuan's pupils dilated as the golden object quickly filled his vision. A gigantic golden hand, surrounded by numerous golden runes, positioned as if to crush something fiercely, descended vertically. The force of the Mahayana rules on it was terrifying and seemingly indestructible, instilling fear in anyone who beheld it. This was not a mere display of power. It was a manifestation of brute force and Tao rules, oppressively bearing down. Not yet ready to be crushed, Jiang Chengxuan roared in defiance. Behind him, the power of the dragon elephant burst forth, his entire body's strength driven to its maximum. Even his form expanded, making him appear as a titan. Transforming the golden void sword into the deep earth halberd, he enlarged it to its fullest, akin to a towering peak, grasping it firmly in his hands. With formidable force, he thrust the halberd upward towards the descending golden hand. Boom! The collision of these terrifying forces caused the void to shatter into countless fragments. Like a mirror explosively breaking, the aftermath of the strike sent shockwaves throughout the space. The deep earth halberd met the golden finger head-on, both vibrating intensely from the immense forces clashing without yield, igniting explosions and ripples through the void. Jiang Chengxuan's face turned a fiery red, his eyes blazing with indomitable fury, his muscles bulging, and the dragon elephant roaring behind him. He stood firm against this might, comparable to the great powers, unyielding to the crushing force of the giant finger. This scene was immensely awe-inspiring and brutal, showcasing an unyielding spirit that defied the heavens. At that moment, Jiang Chengxuan felt as if he were holding up the heavens themselves, the weight colossal. For the first time, such a terrifying power emerged, one that could even make the strength of the dragon elephant feel an immense pressure. He had no choice but to muster all his strength, holding up the heavens with one hand. His deep earth halberd pierced the sky, clashing directly against the golden colossal finger. Each second stretched into eternity, and even when the clash ended, Jiang Chengxuan was unaware. Only when he felt a lightness in his hands did he suddenly realize that he had withstood the barrage. In the sky, the golden colossal finger had dissipated into specks of light, leaving behind only a vast path of void. The gray-white mist was pushed aside by the shattered force of the paths, resembling a heavenly road. He heavily planted his deep earth halberd into the ground, causing an earthquake with a thunderous rumble. Looking at his own arms, bulging veins and an involuntary slight tremor revealed the difficulty of this arm-wrestling match. Jiang Chengxuan circulated his dharmic power through several cycles before he could slightly recover. But just then, in the momentarily calm gray-white mist, another strange light sparked up again. A terrifying aura once more emanated from the heavens, aimed directly at where Jiang Chengxuan stood. Rows of cold lights burst forth in the sky, illuminating as the Big Dipper, exuding an immensely majestic presence. Jiang Chengxuan knew another round of terrifying attacks was about to commence, and this strike also carried the power of Mahayana, almost nearing that of an immortal. Whether it was the enormous dharmic power or the seamless rule, they were even more terrifying than the previous 9th-level beast's technique. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan, having already expended too much strength and hindered by the gray-white mist, couldn't even dodge. He knew he must be undergoing some trial, and the only way out was to pass through it entirely. With this thought, his heart set resolutely, knowing that every forthcoming attack would demand a fight to the death for a chance at survival. Rumble. Above the heavens, the Big Dipper suddenly flared up, the blue flames and auroras instantly obscuring the sky. The next moment, one of the stars flickered and vanished from its original position. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan unfolded his 5 elements samsara world, the circular barrier instantly expanding to its maximum. Rumble. Just as the barrier unfolded, a massive aurora star collided against it, triggering a terrifying explosion. At the same time, an extremely cold and eerie force of the rule erupted from it, beginning to erode the 5 elements samsara rule. This force of the rule, though unable to penetrate the 5 elements samsara world, still caused Jiang Chengxuan's dharmic power to stagnate, and the long-absent sensation of cold also spread throughout his body. This Big Dipper contained the rule of the universe's freezing point, its terrifying aura not fully blockable even by the 5 elements rule. Compared to the previous golden colossal finger, this clash was a test of rule and dharmic power. The freezing point rule, while not violently destructive, silently exerted insane pressure on Jiang Chengxuan's rule and dharmic power. If he couldn't withstand this round of exhaustion, the only outcome would be becoming an ice sculpture. Rumble. As Jiang Chengxuan's expression turned grave, the next moment the Big Dipper flickered and furiously struck. Boom! As if this star was a signal, the Big Dipper blinked continuously, instantly appearing around Jiang Chengxuan. 7 stars like a cage, conjured a deep frozen hell, the extreme freezing aura making Jiang Chengxuan feel as if his blood would freeze. Fortunately, the extreme cold power contained within these star rules, targeting the primordial spirit, was completely blocked by the vast heaven divine Jade, allowing him clarity in this frozen hell. Using this advantage, Jiang Chengxuan drove his will madly, pushing the 5 elements samsara world to its limit. At this moment, within the 5 elements samsara world, it had turned into an ice age, yet within it, the power of the 5 elements still circulated resiliently and resisted. In the erosion of the Big Dipper, even Jiang Chengxuan felt slightly dizzy, but he bit his tongue, forcing himself to stay alert and unleash all his power. This time, amid the siege of the Big Dipper, Jiang Chengxuan did not know how long he lasted. When the stars no longer emitted auroras, he seized the moment to burst forth. From between his brows, a long brewing 5-colored divine light burst forth, sweeping across all the Big Dipper in an instant, forcibly suppressing their final powers. Jiang Chengxuan roared, his body covered in a thin layer of ice. Suddenly shaking violently, he shattered the heavy constraint. He immediately deployed the 5 elements diagram, transforming it into the most lethal golden void sword, its sword light sweeping across. A golden sword intent drew a dazzling halo, in a breath's time, striking simultaneously across the 7 Big Dippers. Ding! Until the next moment, the sound of the sword ringing resonated, and the 7 Big Dippers were split in half in an instant, finally dispersing the bone-penetrating cold. This round of attack was finally thwarted by Jiang Chengxuan. However, after this round, Jiang Chengxuan felt a sense of weakness throughout his body. Nearly 90% of his strength had been depleted. These 3 attacks, comparable to Mahayana, were even more terrifying than battling a true Mahayana Deilord. Faced with these assaults, Jiang Chengxuan couldn't dodge, and moreover, the 3 killing moves were seamlessly interconnected. The contained dharmic power and rule also varied. It was as though 3 Mahyan Deilords were taking turns attacking Jiang Chengxuan, thus producing such a formidable force. At this rate, for the next move, I must resort to using my last trump card. Jiang Chengxuan rapidly pondered his options. In the midst of this, a sensation told him that this trial was far from over with just these 3 killing moves. Based on his estimation, this attack would not be less than 7 times. This was the 7-kill array. Rumble. Just as Jiang Chengxuan was adjusting, as he anticipated, a terrifying aura burst forth from the dome above once again. This strike, compared to the previous 3, was neither weaker nor stronger, still embodying the might of a Mahayana Deilord. Feeling the aura of this wave of attack, Jiang Chengxuan resignedly confirmed that he could no longer defend against it. At this moment, he was left with less than 20% of his strength to withstand this attack. He had no choice but to use his last resort. However, Jiang Chengxuan harbored deeper concerns in his heart. If it truly was the number of 7 kills, then in the time to come, there would still be 4 deadly attacks. Relying on his last resort, he might not be able to block all of them. In the sky, suddenly, dark clouds gathered densely, with golden lightning moving within the clouds like dragons, incredibly shocking. Before Jiang Chengxuan had a chance to catch his breath, the next killing move arrived in an instant. Above the dome, an immense golden lightning bolt, dragon-shaped and almost sentient, intermittently appeared amidst the clouds, its golden dragon eyes flickering with thunder. Undoubtedly, this strike, infused with the most lethal thunder rule and of a rank possibly no less than Shen Ruyan's 5 elements divine thunder, was the most lethal. For Jiang Chengxuan, who was currently exhausted, this pure offensive assault was undoubtedly fatal. Rumble! The sound of thunder reverberated through this world, echoing repeatedly, causing ripples in the void. The next moment, a dragon's roar suddenly resounded, and the entire world was momentarily bathed in gold, sprinkling flecks of spiritual light and igniting lightning everywhere in the void. The dharmic power in the air turned exceedingly violent. The golden dragon, finally swooping down with an unstoppable force, made Jiang Chengxuan feel an overwhelming presence pressing down, his skin tingling with numbness. The golden divine thunder dragon roared as it struck down. This strike was still fatal. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan had no strength left to block it. But just as death seemed imminent, Jiang Chengxuan, with an unchanging expression, lightly pinched a talisman in his hand. Inscribed on the talisman were incredibly mysterious patterns. This was the absolute defense talisman awarded by the system. Activate. Facing the furious golden divine dragon, Jiang Chengxuan deployed the absolute defense talisman. Instantaneously, an immensely powerful aura burst forth, chaotically forging a domain of its own in the tumult. Within this barrier, the power it contained felt like nothingness, invincible and unshakable. Rumble! The golden divine thunder struck the absolute defense. This time, however, no terrifying fluctuations occurred. Or rather, Jiang Chengxuan, within the absolute defense barrier, felt nothing. The previously fearsome golden divine thunder, upon colliding with the absolute defense, was like a pebble falling into the deep sea, merely stirring minor ripples. The terrifying destructive force of the thunder, as if swallowed into another world, abruptly dissipated significantly. This scene, even Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but feel surprised and greatly admired internally. The treasure provided by the system, indeed, maintained its usual quality, fully living up to its name. Facing the thunder rule of Mahayana, the strongest killing rule, and being able to defend against it so seamlessly showed the level of this item, perhaps even superior to Mahayana, possibly capable of absolutely blocking even an immortal strike. This wasn't just a transcendence of cultivation levels, but a suppression on the level of rule. The rule from the absolute defense talisman was some absolute rule. However, the only shortcoming was that, restricted by the rules of this world, Jiang Chengxuan could not use divine powers to restore his strength. Under the protection of absolute defense, he could only slowly circulate his cultivation techniques to recover his dharmic power. Boom! Outside, the thunder raged furiously, while within the absolute defense, Jiang Chengxuan sat in meditation, circulating his energies. This scene was filled with an eerie feeling. But just moments later, the terrifying golden divine thunder dragon finally exhausted itself against the absolute defense. The outside scene returned to being covered in gray-white fog, with only the golden lightning still occasionally flickering in the void. With the absolute defense talisman, Jiang Chengxuan had ultimately stopped the fourth attack of the 7 kills sequence. However, Jiang Chengxuan felt no joy in his heart, knowing that at least 3 more equally terrifying attacks were soon to come. And the protective aura of the absolute defense, after blocking all the strikes of the golden divine thunder, was not as robust as before. Its emitted aura was noticeably weaker. Jiang Chengxuan could not possibly block all attacks with just one talisman. The next wave of terrifying attacks gave Jiang Chengxuan no chance to breathe, immediately brewing again in the dome above. The terrifying fluctuation of aura spread, and the 5th attack of the 7-kill array revealed its face. In the void, 2 tiny black singularities flickered, followed by a spreading aura of destruction. These 2 points, swelling rapidly in the wind, quickly transformed into something akin to black holes. The 2 black holes grew larger and larger, eventually turning into abyss-like presences in the increasingly terrifying aura. Deep and unfathomable, these openings seemed to connect to some sinister world, emitting an extremely evil aura. The next moment, Two gigantic black hands stretched out from them, tearing the void violently and striking fiercely against the absolute defense. Rumble! Under the wave of evil aura, the void instantly shook incessantly, the evil force of corruption instantly turning the barrier black. Within the absolute defense, Jiang Chengxuan felt the world plunge into darkness. Outside, the two evil hands, growing various bizarre organs and wildly twisting, struck the protection repeatedly and fiercely. The terrifying presence seemed ready to shatter the void, turning the surrounding area into a land of chaos. A bizarre rule, aggressively eroding the absolute defense barrier, came from a Daelord of a demonic oath, mysterious and sinister. If Jiang Chengxuan had been exposed, he would have faced not only the force of the attack but also the corruption and infection from the abyss. However, the absolute defense barrier spared him from these troubles. Despite the chaotic surge and explosive growth of the evil power outside, and the corrosion of the void by the dark, bizarre hands, they were still entirely isolated and consumed by the absolute defense. During this attack, Jiang Chengxuan remained worry-free. Within a swath of darkness, he sat in meditation, focusing on regenerating his strength. Until the darkness finally dispersed, the absolute defense talisman was still standing firm, though the aura it emitted was increasingly faint. The capability that initially completely isolated all disturbances was now almost gone, further slowing Jiang Chengxuan's rate of power recovery. But with the help of the absolute defense talisman, Jiang Chengxuan had endured the 5th round of the 7-kill array. Only 2 more waves were needed to be withstood to pass this trial. Moreover, Jiang Chengxuan's strength had now recovered by nearly 20%. However, at this moment, an unforeseen and shocking change occurred that Jiang Chengxuan had not anticipated. While he was still planning for the subsequent stages, an incredibly mysterious force suddenly erupted from the ground below. This attack was so sudden, and the power behind it was so mysterious and high-level, that it caught Jiang Chengxuan entirely off guard. This abrupt and mysterious fluctuation seemed entirely non-aggressive, inflicting no harm on Jiang Chengxuan. However, when a burst of blue-white radiance illuminated this world, the absolute defense, under its influence, slowly began to disintegrate into specks of light. This strike was not meant to cause damage, but acted like an absolute command, nullifying all changes in this world and restoring everything to its original state. All the previous battles and collisions, which had left chaos, shattered voids and disrupted forces of rule, dissipated into points of light, as if an immortal's hand had smoothed them over. This wave reset the entire gray-white fog world, and also dissolved Jiang Chengxuan's deployed absolute defense talisman. This was unexpected for Jiang Chengxuan. He had thought that regardless of how terrifying the next attack might be, the absolute defense talisman would at least buy him some more time. But he never anticipated that this 6th wave of the 7-kill array would not be an attack but a purification. This was undoubtedly a high-level divine power, containing rules that could instantly restore everything. Even the remaining absolute defense was eradicated with it. Just moments after this purifying force erupted, as if it had been prearranged, the dome above immediately began to gather energy for the last of the 7 kills. At this time, Jiang Chengxuan, whose restored dharmic power was less than half of his peak, stood no chance against this most terrifying assault. Without giving Jiang Chengxuan time to think, the final assault burst forth with a majestic momentum, filling the skies of this world with boundless nebulas. The overbearing aura surged, chaos swept through, and the boundless nebulas instantly transformed into a fierce storm, immensely terrifying. The storm nebula arrived in an instant, as if the entire world was pressing down, a cosmic storm furiously striking. This 7th kill, more terrifying than the previous 6, also embodied the grand Tao of the universe, with the power to stir the entire nebula and strike down. At this moment, all 7 kills had arrived, and Jiang Chengxuan was about to be slain in an instant. At the critical moment, Jiang Chengxuan had no choice but to make a desperate effort, unleashing all his power, but this less than 50% strength was so feeble under the 7th kill. Rumble! Just at the encounter, the barrier of the 5 elements samsara world was battered into a sieve. Sacrifice. In a moment of life and death, with a thought Jiang Chengxuan, as the 5 elements samsara world shattered, deployed a natural array. This array, obtained previously in the natural herb garden, had the special effect of shielding aura and concealing fate. Once, when Daelord Southbright tried to prevent Jiang Chengxuan's Shifu, Qin Shenwu, from breaking through to the Mahayana realm, it was this natural array that resolved the crisis. At this moment, the only thing Jiang Chengxuan could think of was this last trump card. In an instant, the natural array unfolded, plunging the area around Jiang Chengxuan into illusion. He immediately felt a sense of relief, realizing that the natural array was taking effect, confusing the targeting of the 7 kills. In this desperate situation, the fact that the natural array was effective brought him some surprise joy. As long as this array worked, the probability of surviving this wave of calamity increased by at least 50%. Indeed, the power of the natural array was also a very mysterious existence, and its own level of power was quite high, capable of blocking some of the storm nebula. Rumble! The terrifying power of the storm nebula swept over the natural array instantly, and Jiang Chengxuan felt as if the sky was falling. But with the help of the natural array, he finally had some confidence to block it, unlike before, where it was a situation of certain death. Under the cover of the natural array, even the 7 kills could not accurately target Jiang Chengxuan's aura. Thus, its attacking power was dispersed, invisibly weakened. The storm formed by the nebulas raged outside the natural array, turning Jiang Chengxuan's view into a chaotic scene of cosmic torrents. The entire chaotic starry sky in this world intensified, and in that moment, it felt as if the sky and earth were collapsing, the world breaking apart, and the power of collapsing stars created numerous black holes, unleashing terrifying destructive power. These forces reached the pinnacle of Mahayana, immensely terrifying. Jiang Chengxuan's heart pounded uncontrollably. He had to use all his power at its peak, in conjunction with the natural array, to fiercely contend with the continuously striking storm nebula. Fortunately, under the interference of the natural array, some of the 7th kill's power could not concentrate, which brought a strange balance to the extremely critical situation. Boom! The terrifying fluctuations continuously caused destructive havoc in this world. This level of explosion had now surpassed even those of the 2 9th-level beasts fighting previously. But despite the gray-white fog obstructing visibility, no one could witness this shocking scene. Unfortunately, this time, luck was not on Jiang Chengxuan's side. Despite exhausting all his dharmic power, the storm nebula continued to strike with its magnificent power, relentlessly bombarding the natural array. Ultimately, in Jiang Chengxuan's reluctant gaze, the natural array could no longer withstand the full force of the 7 kills and exploded, turning into a sky full of light particles. The remnants of the storm nebula's force, like a destructive wind, swept across countless stars, striking Jiang Chengxuan's body. In an instant, Jiang Chengxuan felt an immense pain, and at the same time, the raging cosmic rule began to invade his own, clashing within him, causing him to feel an intense tearing sensation. Under the impact of this residual force, Jiang Chengxuan was severely injured in an instant. Even with his formidable physical resilience, he was left with several terrifying wounds, and the chaotic forces corroded him. Inside him, the terrifying clash brought wave after wave of damage, causing Jiang Chengxuan to feel the life force ebbing away. All he could do was muster every inch of strength in his body to resist those invading forces. It was a battle of life and death. Jiang Chengxuan's eyes bled, his teeth clenched tightly as he persisted. Just as his vision blurred, feeling the last flicker of life's flame about to extinguish, the tumult inside him finally settled. Jiang Chengxuan could barely keep his eyes open. This was the most disheveled he had been in centuries. But still, he had not been defeated. He had withstood all 7 kills and was still alive, not fallen. The next moment, he vaguely sensed that the gray-white fog was finally beginning to disperse. As the final assault subsided, Jiang Chengxuan finally encountered the moment that would break the deadlock. The previously oppressive gray-white fog that had blinded him began to gradually dissipate, thinning like smoke and slowly drifting away with the wind. Above him in the dome of the sky, 7 ancient runes linked together in a circle, forming a mysterious pattern, radiating an unbelievable aura of mystic light. The power of these 7 ancient runes, having been completely expended in the 7 kills, was now spent. That singular, incredibly mysterious speck of light slowly descended, shining upon the severely injured Jiang Chengxuan. In just an instant, Jiang Chengxuan felt his life force replenishing. All his injuries began to slowly heal at this moment. Thus, the fatal danger was finally navigated past. However, at this moment, Jiang Chengxuan was oblivious to his surroundings. Under the influence of this mystic light, he instantly entered a state of sudden enlightenment. His previously exhausted rule power began to manifest anew. The rules of the five elements samsara were fully displayed. In the now complete world of the five elements samsara, traces of green light began to illuminate. Guided by a strand of mystic light, Jiang Chengxuan's consciousness began to sift through the experiences of battles he faced after his breakthrough in the Tao mastery, each one becoming incredibly clear. Whether it was the campaign against the demonic paths or the trials faced in this immortal cave, the Tao mastery level meteorite array, the four elemental giants, the 7-kill array, every engagement, every application of dharmic power and rules transformed into enlightenment, flowing continuously like a spring in his mind. Outside, this part of the world had completely opened up, with nothing but endless white mist floating into the sky. It resembled the steam released from countless hot springs. Such a sight undoubtedly caught the attention of nearby cultivators. Coincidentally, the closest ones were the demonic cultivators from the sacred skeleton sect. After entering this immortal cave, over 10 days had passed. With the help of their demonic technique, those who had been scattered by the power of the immortal cave finally regrouped. At this time, they were either seeking opportunities or planning to seize chances from the righteous path. At this moment, the area where Jiang Chengxuan was located began to fill with obscuring white fog, immediately attracting the attention of the group of bone cultivators. "Let's go check it out. There seems to be some activity over there. It might be some kind of opportunity." Meanwhile, Jiang Chengxuan, in a state of enlightenment, felt an immense joy in his heart and mind. This trial of the 7 kills naturally contained opportunities matching its peril. That speck of green light was a reward from the immortal cave. Given the intensity of this trial, the level of opportunity for enlightenment was undoubtedly great. This 7 kills trial, even a typical Mahayana Dailord might not successfully navigate. Yet Jiang Chengxuan, merely at the level of Tao mastery, had not only passed but also gained an incredibly potent opportunity. That speck of light finally made Jiang Chengxuan realize the mysteries of this world. Originally, these 7 deadly strikes were the overpowering killing moves faced by an ancient immortal being before their ascension. After becoming an immortal on a whim, he recalled his past and recreated these 7 killing moves through special methods, each refined into even more powerful techniques. These modified killing moves were then projected here, staying in this world alongside a trace of the ancient immortal's enlightenment, turning it into an opportunity. This hint of immortal enlightenment, to someone merely at the stage of Tao mastery like Jiang Chengxuan, was like having an unfair advantage. Under the guidance of this speck of light, his understanding of the rules accelerated rapidly, and his realm of power also began to grow incessantly. It was like when he consumed the advancement pill given by the system at the Tao fusion realm, except now, Jiang Chengxuan was at the level of Tao mastery. Now seated in meditation, his injuries completely healed, his aura became incredibly serene, under which lay a rapidly advancing realm. Early Tao mastery, mid Tao mastery, late Tao mastery. The rules of the 5 elements and the samsara were evolving rapidly, with every breath bringing a new change. The power of the rules progressed and stabilized with each moment. Such a scene, if witnessed by others, would surely drop jaws. What others could not achieve in thousands or even tens of thousands of years, Jiang Chengxuan was accomplishing in moments. Each minor stage of the Tao mastery required continuous painstaking effort to advance, and its difficulty of breakthrough was no less than that of other major realms. But now, with the opportunity from immortal, Jiang Chengxuan was breaking through realms as naturally as drinking water. Finally, his aura completely stabilized at the peak of the Tao mastery realm. This was nothing short of miraculous. This brush with death had turned into a fortuitous boon for Jiang Chengxuan. Even if this venture into the immortal cave brought no other gains, this alone was more than enough. Advancing directly from the initial stages of Tao mastery to its peak, Jiang Chengxuan had potentially saved himself a millennium of cultivation. The previous master of the Haoran sect, Zhu Ping, was at the peak of Tao mastery, and now Jiang Chengxuan had caught up to him, a fact that was bound to astonish anyone. Jiang Chengxuan stood up, feeling the almost complete Tao principles within him and the numerous realms he had surpassed, still stunned by his own progress. Although he had anticipated significant opportunities in this immortal cave, he had never imagined that this opportunity would allow him to break through to the complete fulfillment of Tao mastery, just one step away from becoming a Mahayana Dailord. That is, he was now only one step away from the pinnacle of the floodgate realm. The recent series of extraordinary events truly left Jiang Chengxuan in awe. This immortal cave was indeed a blessed place for him. As Jiang Chengxuan stood there in astonishment, the cultivators from the sacred skeleton sect had quietly approached the vicinity. The phenomenon of Jiang Chengxuan's breakthrough had caught their attention, and upon detecting it, they immediately moved closer. As a result, they came face to face with the newly awakened Jiang Chengxuan. Seeing the several dark figures suddenly appearing before him, Jiang Chengxuan was also taken aback. He quickly realized that his earlier speculation was not mistaken. In the instant these dark figures appeared, he could tell they were all cultivators from the sacred skeleton sect. The two groups faced each other, and the atmosphere tensed up in an instant. At the moment they saw Jiang Chengxuan, the members of the sacred skeleton sect's faces drastically changed. Jiang Chengxuan's identity and appearance were notoriously well known within the sect. He was essentially their archenemy. Among them were higher-ups of the sect who had personally witnessed Jiang Chengxuan fighting their sect master on the day the Heoran sect attacked. The battle was intense and evenly matched. Although they had cultivators of Tao mastery among them, they knew they were still not a match for Jiang Chengxuan, the master of the Heoran sect. However, just as they began to panic and thought about fleeing, the sharp-eyed leader of the demonic cultivators noticed something unusual about Jiang Chengxuan. He saw Jiang Chengxuan's surprise upon recognizing them, but also noted that Jiang Chengxuan had not attacked them yet. This led him to suspect there was more to the situation than met the eye. He used a voice transmission to stop the other panic members and stared fiercely at Jiang Chengxuan. Despite facing the hostility of these sacred skeleton sect cultivators, Jiang Chengxuan remained composed, showing no signs of panic. In reality, even though Jiang Chengxuan had reached the peak of Tao mastery with the help of immortal enlightenment, his physical state was still very weak. The wounds from his trial through the 7 kills array had healed, but he still bore some scars. This combination of factors prevented him from taking immediate action against these demonic cultivators. However, the demonic cultivators interpreted his condition differently. They speculated that Jiang Chengxuan must have gained some significant opportunities here, but had been injured in the process, possibly leaving him in a weakened state. This assumption filled the demonic cultivators with excitement. For them, Jiang Chengxuan was not only an enemy who had suppressed their sect, but had also driven them from their ancestral lands, a mortal enemy in their eyes. Even after their ancestor awoke and saw the state of the sect, he was furious. Although they were primarily interested in benefits, the actions of Jiang Chengxuan and the Heoran sect felt like a personal affront, especially since it had been a junior at the Tao mastery level who had stood against them. As a result, the Mahayana ancestor had issued a decree within the sacred skeleton sect that anyone who killed a Heoran sect cultivator would be richly rewarded. Anyone who eliminated a high-ranking member of the Heoran sect could rise to the position of Grand Elder and sit on equal footing with the sect leader. Originally, the sect members were eager but lacked the courage because they were acutely aware of the current strength of the Heoran sect. However, upon entering the immortal cave abode, the demonic cultivators thought they might have a chance to exploit a situation, like now, which seemed like a perfect opportunity. An isolated Heoran sect master, severely wounded, potentially carrying numerous fortunes, this was a golden opportunity. If they could kill Jiang Chengxuan, they could return as the new leaders of the sacred skeleton sect. Furthermore, the treasures carried by the Heoran sect master would become their spoils of war, an unimaginable wealth that no demonic cultivator could resist. "Master Jiang, you don't look so good," observed the leading demonic cultivator, growing more confident in his speculation after noticing Jiang Chengxuan's prolonged inaction. "People from the sacred skeleton sect, how did you get in here?" Jiang countered, not addressing the provocation. He was more curious about how these demonic forces had managed to infiltrate the immortal cave abode given the expected restrictions and surveillance by the righteous forces. Master Jiang, I can tell you all about it, but it will cost you your life," the demonic cultivator said ominously. "Attack!" The demonic cultivator spoke slowly. At that moment, the Tao mastery-level demonic cultivator from the sacred skeleton sect suddenly attacked Jiang Chengxuan with a ferocious burst of demonic energy. Clearly, Jiang Chengxuan's non-response was interpreted by these demonic cultivators as a sign of weakness. Without hesitation, and unsure if there were other allies of the righteous alliance nearby, they manifested the rule of the sacred skeleton sect, forming gigantic skeletal phantasms that spanned heaven and earth. The group of demonic cultivators immediately surrounded Jiang Chengxuan, their huge skeletal phantasms with ghostly flames in their eyes, their enormous bone claws tearing through the void toward him. Caught in this ghastly domain with only 20% of his power, Jiang Chengxuan manifested the five-element samsara rule, forcibly erecting a defense. Rumble! Countless bone claws hammered on the barrier of the five-element samsara, causing explosions and shaking the void incessantly. He really is injured. Heaven truly favors us. Ha ha ha! The sacred skeleton sect will soon be mine to command. The leader of the demonic cultivators exclaimed ecstatically, laughing arrogantly. From this clash, he indeed confirmed that Jiang Chengxuan's power was far from its peak state. Kill the Haoran sect's master, and the ancestor will surely reward us greatly. Someone among the demonic cultivators excitedly shouted, igniting a frenzy of greed among them all. The prospect of killing the Haoran sect's master represented an unprecedented honor. Such a deed would be remembered forever in the annals of demonic cultivation, marking a historic achievement. For these frenzied demonic cultivators, notoriety was a significant reward. Many had joined the demonic path driven by the pursuit of power and the allure of wealth, motivated by their own greed. With such incentives, the group of demonic cultivators no longer held back. They unleashed their full strength ruthlessly, manifesting terrifying forces of death and annihilation. Each one of these demonic cultivators was an elite of the sacred skeleton sect, qualified to be part of such an expedition into the immortal cave abode due to their prowess. At this moment, deploying their full capabilities, the power they unleashed was on par with those at the peak of Tao mastery. The endless streams of death energy and the rule of obliteration enveloped Jiang Chengxuan, effectively sealing him in a lethal lock. A terrifying torrent of magical force, akin to a cataclysmic flood, descended upon Jiang Chengxuan. The combined strike of the demonic cultivators was immensely powerful, causing visible cracks to appear in Jiang Chengxuan's five-element samsara defense. This development sent a wave of euphoria through the sacred skeleton sect's cultivators as they sensed victory within their grasp, their dreams of glory seemingly unfolding before their eyes. Heh, is that all the strength you have? However, Jiang Chengxuan's mocking retort suddenly cut through their illusions, casting a chill over their triumph. Still trying to talk tough, Jiang Chengxuan. For some reason, Jiang Chengxuan's simple words cooled the fervor of the demonic cultivators, instilling a sense of dread. Perhaps it was Jiang Chengxuan's legendary status in the Tianhong realm, or maybe the deep impression of fear he had left on them from past encounters. Even though they believed Jiang Chengxuan to be severely injured, an intense wariness lingered. But with the situation at a critical point, they had no choice but to continue their assault. Despite their reservations, they had to go all out to eliminate Jiang Chengxuan. And indeed, there was no reason to retreat just because of a few words. Doing so would turn them into a laughingstock in the cultivation world. He must be bluffing. Attack. Caught between a rock and a hard place, the leader of the sacred skeleton sect once again rallied his forces. The four giant skeletal phantasms merged with the sect's rule of death, transforming into grotesque forms. One phantasm sprouted countless bone hands and elongated its body, becoming a massive centipede-like creature spanning miles. Another transformed into a demon with skeletal wings, whipping up winds of death. Yet another grew 100 feet tall, its body turning pitch black as it exuded an aura of death, corroding the void around it. In the next instant, these skeletal phantasms unleashed their varied powers, aiming to shatter Jiang Chengxuan's five-element samsara defenses in a decisive blow. Rumble, as the infinite aura of death infused their attacks, Jiang Chengxuan's defenses finally burst apart. Yet, his expression remained unchanged, unnerving the attacking demonic cultivators. Dai, the lead demonic cultivator of the sacred skeleton sect, his face twisted in rage, directed his skeletal phantasm to strike furiously at Jiang Chengxuan. This attack, delivered with full force, shattered the void, transforming his rule into a sweeping storm. But the next moment, what unfolded before their eyes sent a shockwave of despair through the hearts of the demonic cultivators. Jiang Chengxuan casually blocked the supposedly fatal strike with one hand. Then, a startling transformation occurred that chilled the bones of all the sacred skeleton sect members. The infinite wheel. With a fierce shout, Jiang Chengxuan activated the powerful physical divine power, the infinite wheel. Within a few breaths, his aura climbed exponentially, and in the blink of an eye, he was back to his peak condition. Gulp! The sight caused the demonic cultivators to gasp in horror, especially those who had witnessed Jiang Chengxuan's battles before. They realized something incredible. Jiang Chengxuan's dharmic power had not only returned, but was even more formidable than it had been 100 years ago, surpassing even that of the sacred skeleton sect's ancestor, and by a significant margin. Back then, with just an initial stage of Dao mastery, Jiang Chengxuan had been able to battle the peak Dao mastery cultivators. Now, merely a century later, he had reached the peak of Dao mastery, which was an astounding feat. How is this possible? The demonic cultivators roared in disbelief. The legendary immortal cave abode was said to offer miraculous opportunities that could instantly elevate one's cultivation. Why had it been Jiang Chengxuan who stumbled upon them? In a flash, jealousy, terror, and madness surged through the hearts of the sacred skeleton sect cultivators. They were unaware of the immense sacrifices Jiang Chengxuan had made to seize this chance, repeatedly facing life-and-death situations to gain the opportunity. Given the first of the 7 kills, these clamoring demonic cultivators likely wouldn't have survived. Afraid, you rats of the demonic path, since you've come, none of you will leave. With his strength restored, Jiang Chengxuan's words boomed with authority. In the next moment, his aura of Dao mastery at its absolute peak exploded, blasting the encircling demonic cultivators away. His formidable power instantly dispersed their blockade, transforming the surrounding area into a domain governed by the 5 elements samsara world. The omnipresent aura of death was swiftly suppressed. The terrifying skeletal phantasms aged in an instant, their forms stooping as if bearing immense burdens, and the same was true for the demonic cultivators. An unbearable pressure descended upon them in an instant, stifling their ability to channel magic or manipulate laws. Only then did they recall the dread of being suppressed by the Haoran sect. Jiang Chengxuan had been feigning weakness all along, setting a trap to lure them into complacency. Damn it all, don't be afraid, kill him and we will have a way out. The leader of the sacred skeleton sect bellowed in rage and panic. His words rekindled the fighting spirit of the demonic cultivators, pushing them into a corner where their only option was to fight desperately. For these cultivators of the demonic path, madness was never in short supply. Under the weight of overwhelming fear and desperation, they briefly suppressed their terror and launched another ferocious attack. Their skeletal phantasms rekindled their vicious nature, and the black aura of death once again began to corrupt the corners of the 5 elements samsara world. In this do-or-die battle, the demonic cultivators unleashed even more terrifying power. The gigantic skeletal phantasms pierced through the void, hurtling towards Jiang Chengxuan with renewed fury. However, such a desperate struggle was akin to moths flinging themselves into the flame for Jiang Chengxuan, who had faced far more terrifying entities before. Activate! Jiang's voice boomed as he activated a powerful technique. The 5-element diagram emerged in his hand, transforming into the mighty deep earth halberd. Within the vast body of the halberd, stars churned with immense power. Without a moment's hesitation, Jiang soared into the air, and with a sweep of the deep earth halberd, he suppressed everything in his path. The formidable power unleashed by Jiang Chengxuan utterly stirred the world around them, creating a tempest that howled, as if the heavens themselves roared in fury with each swing of his deep earth halberd. Elevated to the status of an arcane treasure, the halberd now held the power of millions of stars, capable of quelling the void with a mere flick. The impact of its strike left the cultivators of the sacred skeleton sect gasping for breath, overwhelmed by its force. Boom! Like a moving iron curtain, the deep earth halberd collided with the skeletal phantasms, causing a sharp explosive sound as it instantly halted their formidable momentum. These phantasms, akin to the cultivators' intrinsic spiritual treasures, required extensive rituals and the bonding of souls to control, nurtured over time with precious materials from heaven and earth. Their strength was comparable to that of the sacred skeleton sect's demonic cultivators themselves, making any ordinary cultivator facing them feel as though they were battling 2 adversaries of the same caliber. However, this scenario only applied to cultivators of the same level. For someone like Jiang Chengxuan, whose power overwhelmingly surpassed theirs, and who wielded an intrinsic arcane treasure, even numerous skeletal phantasms were no more significant than mere puppets. Under the might of the deep earth halberd, the centipede-like skeletal phantasm crumbled like brittle ruins, its bones snapping crisply, resounding through the void. Each of its 1,000 legs was shattered by the halberd, and the backlash of this devastating force caused its controller to scream in agony. Then, continuing its relentless assault, the halberd, charged with the descending force of 1,000,000 stars, shattered the void as it moved on to the next skeletal phantasm. This scene plastered a look of sheer terror on the faces of the sacred skeleton, sex, demonic cultivators, but the disruptive force of Jiang's attack made it impossible for them to evade. Rumble! Once again, the deep earth halberd pierced through the bone bodies of the phantasms, pulverizing the hard skeletal structure into dust. The shattered remains fell like pillars of white stone, crashing down with a resounding boom. The intense backlash turned another demonic cultivator's face deathly pale, his expression twisted in torment. Some realized the insurmountable gap in power between them and attempted to flee, but these thoughts were futile. Within moments, they were overtaken by Jiang Chengxuan's relentless pursuit, struck down mercilessly by his halberd. The initial bravado of the sacred skeleton sex demonic cultivators was crushed by a single strike from Jiang Chengxuan, reinstating deep-seated fears and leaving them utterly demoralized. They quickly realized the chasm between Jiang Chengxuan's abilities and their own. Even the thought that the ancestor of their sect might only last 10 moves against Jiang Chengxuan filled them with dread. What initially seemed like a golden opportunity for glory now appeared to be sheer folly. Yet the world offers no option for regret, and despite their remorse, these cultivators had to swallow the bitter fruit of their greed, paying with their lives. The sky filled with fragments of white bone falling like snowflakes in a grotesque imitation of winter, turning the scene into one of hellish despair. Standing dominantly in the void, Jiang Chengxuan surveyed the demonic horde, his gaze electric and unyielding. Those among the sacred skeleton sect who felt regret were especially pale, their faces etched with terror and eyes red with fear. "Jiang, Master Jiang, spare my life and I will do anything." At that moment, one of the demonic cultivators broke down completely, falling to his knees and crying out in a trembling voice. He was truly terrified, utterly drained of strength. "White Skeleton, you are the holy son of our sacred skeleton sect, carrying the blood of our ancestor. How dare you?" The lead demonic cultivator of the sect, seeing this, roared in fury. "No, no, I just don't want to die, I'm not wrong," the sect's so-called holy son shouted back, driven to madness. This display left Jiang Chengxuan somewhat speechless, finding such adversaries rather disappointing. This supposed sacred son of the sect, evidently coddled and raised on the strength of his lineage, had sailed too smoothly on his path of cultivation, completely ignorant of the world's cruelty. But Jiang Chengxuan knew all too well the true nature of these demonic cultivators. Even if they appeared innocent, it was only an innocence of evil, and they had certainly committed their share of atrocities. "Go to hell." Without waiting for another plea, Jiang Chengxuan spoke indifferently, transforming his deep earth halberd into the golden void sword. With a flash of golden light slicing through the void, a head tumbled to the ground, soul shattered and dispersed. After testing the full extent of his Dao mastery power, Jiang Chengxuan was now genuinely prepared to deal lethal blows to these demonic cultivators. To eradicate them, he didn't even need a second strike. This sight instilled a mix of rage, chill, and despair in the hearts of the remaining demonic cultivators from the sacred skeleton sect. They knew their fate was sealed today, and with the death of these elite members, the sect was destined to plummet to a third-rate sect. Fight him to the end. Attack. In a last desperate struggle, the surviving demonic cultivators, overwhelmed by fury and despair, let out ferocious cries and charged at Jiang Chengxuan. Jiang Chengxuan's expression remained impassive as he wielded the golden void sword. In an instant, the entire area transformed into a sea of golden sword energy. Whether it was the skeletal phantasms, Dao mastery-level demonic cultivators, or Dao fusion cultivators, they were all equal under the slash of the golden void sword. The pain was over before it could even be felt. The demonic cultivators' defensive dharmic power and rules were penetrated in an instant, and then the force of golden void sword erupted, obliterating them into nothingness, annihilating both body and spirit. These greedy demonic cultivators were utterly crushed by Jiang Chengxuan's full Dao mastery strength, cut down in a single devastating blow. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away within the same immortal cave abode, another scene unfolded at a site of opportunity. A colossal skeletal phantasm tore through the void, and from it stepped an old man in a white robe. His face, wrinkled like tree bark, was contorted with a rage so intense it could only be described as ferocious. A surge of deadly stillness burst forth, withering the land within 100 miles around him. Who has slain so many of my sacred skeleton sex elite? Who? I will drag you out, flay your skin, strip your bones, and refine you into a puppet to suffer eternally. The white-robed elder roared, his Mahayana presence undeniably shaking the void, revealing his identity as the ancestor of the sacred skeleton sect, the revered ancestor known as Demon Ancestor Skeleton. Just as he emerged from a site of opportunity, having acquired a treasure that barely caught his eye, he sensed that the soul lamps of his sect's core disciples, which he had brought with him, had extinguished in mere moments. This ignited a fury in him like never before. While he usually disregarded the mundane affairs of the sacred skeleton sect, he did pay attention to matters concerning his lineage and bloodline. The individuals he had brought to the immortal cave abode were his confidants, some even his descendants. Now, their sudden and complete demise was a colossal blow to the sect. Such a loss was even more devastating than their previous suppression by the Haoran sect, stripping away their elite disciples and potentially relegating the sacred skeleton sect to a third-rate force. Damn it all, Demon Ancestor Skeleton cursed, an ancient rage burning within him. He was convinced that their deaths were caused by an enemy, not by the dangers of the immortal cave abode itself. His eyes filled with a terrifying murderous intent, he unleashed a surge of deadly energy and divine laws, probing the cosmos to trace the cause and culprit. However, his efforts were fruitless. Jiang Chengxuan, who was responsible, was well protected by layers of divine concealment and talismans that even immortals might struggle to penetrate, let alone a Mahayana ancestor like himself. Ultimately, Demon Ancestor Skeleton could only swallow his anger and frustration, causing destruction in the immortal cave abode before retreating helplessly. Meanwhile, Jiang Chengxuan, having already collected his spoils, continued his search for Shen Ruyan and others within the cave. Simultaneously, in another part of the immortal cave abode, amidst thunderous echoes and lightning strikes that tore the ground apart, several green-robed demonic cultivators were surrounding a slender woman. This was Shen Ruyan, Jiang Chengxuan's beloved, who, unluckily, had encountered a group of demonic cultivators from the Ghost Hall while searching for her own fortunes. Luckily, these cultivators from the Ghost Hall did not include any ancestor of the Mahayana realm. Shen Ruyan's command of the five elements divine thunder, which greatly countered the Ghost Hall's techniques, enabled her to remain unharmed despite being outnumbered. A disciple of the Thunderclap Valley, the opportunity here has been claimed by us. Surrender the treasures and you may leave, rasped a strangely shaped cultivator among the green-robed group, evidently the most powerful among them and a master of the Ghost Hall. Despite his superior strength and realm, he was unable to defeat Shen Ruyan due to various factors, and thus resorted to deception, planning to seize the opportunity first and settle scores later. Prattle all you want. The spirit of thunder and lightning is not something you demons can covet so easily, Shen Ruyan retorted dismissively. The location they were fighting over concealed the spirit of thunder and lightning, a treasure that was a godsend for her. She could easily claim it without any trial, far luckier in this regard than even Jiang Chengxuan. Regrettably, just at the crucial moment, these Ghost Hall cultivators had blocked her path and startled the spirit of lightning into hiding. Bluster all you want, you know nothing of death. Attack, kill her. Incensed by Shen Ruyan's mockery, the Ghost Hall cultivators manifested their rules of the netherworld and launched a fierce attack. Their combat method shared similarities with that of the sacred skeleton sect, relying on nurtured souls of famished ghosts infused with netherworld power. Like many demonic paths, they used external entities to temporarily boost their power. In an instant, massive ghosts emerged from the bodies of the Ghost Hall cultivators, their nether powers erupting furiously. Some ghosts resembled hungry ghouls, their faces larger than their bodies and grotesquely bloated with gaping sores. Others were covered in wailing human faces, incredibly horrifying to behold. These ghostly attacks typically included damage to the primordial spirit, making them formidable. However, in the face of Shen Ruyan, their effectiveness was significantly diminished, only real pressure coming from direct dharmic power and rules. Armed with the 5 lightning immortal slayer and enveloped in 5-colored divine thunder, Shen Ruyan was untouchable. Her divine thunder, scorching the void, struck back at the cultivators, its demon-exorcising power undeniable. Shen Ruyan, the holy daughter of the Thunderclap Valley, wielded her abilities with expert ease, her tactics and power rivaling even Jiang Chengxuan's. Her agility and strength, along with her mastery of rules and spiritual treasures, allowed her to weave through the enemy's attacks with grace and ferocity. As she struck, her 5 elements divine thunder roared out without mercy, often achieving impressive results and causing great distress to the opposing demonic cultivators. Despite the disorderly and desperate attacks by the Ghost Hall cultivators under the direction of their Dao Mastery superiors, they were unable to gain an upper hand. The battle continued amidst endless thunder, with neither side securing a decisive victory. This was exactly the strategy of the Ghost Hall, to wear down Shen Ruyan with their numerical superiority, believing that eventually they could overpower her. It was a dishonorable tactic of using strength in numbers, which was effective albeit shameful. The demonic cultivators, devoid of any scruples, fully embraced this approach. Moments later, Shen Ruyan unleashed another devastating burst of 5 elements divine thunder. A sea of lightning surged with the swing of her 5 lightning immortal slayer, forcefully pushing back the attackers. Her beautiful brows furrowed slightly. She clearly recognized the enemy's intentions. With no hesitation, Shen Ruyan then unleashed all her might, calling down a towering bolt of lightning with overwhelming force. As the Ghost Hall cultivators braced themselves for the impact, she suddenly dove into the lightning, using it as cover to escape. "No good, she's trying to flee after her," shouted the Ghost Hall's Dao Mastery cultivator in panic. He summoned his own spectral force, transforming into a streak of green light to pursue her. The rest of the demonic cultivators followed suit, closely chasing after her in a desperate attempt to capture or kill her. The show of strength by Shen Ruyan undeniably disrupted the formation of the Ghost Hall cultivators, making them unwilling to let go of the credit they believed they had at hand. Thus they hastily pursued her. However, Shen Ruyan had more than just escape in mind. After feinting once to mislead all the cultivators, Shen Ruyan transformed into a bolt of lightning and flew towards the location where the power of thunder and lightning had previously hidden itself. Her intent was not to flee. The earlier diversion was merely a deceptive tactic she had crafted. The Ghost Hall cultivators, deceived by her act, unwittingly bolstered their confidence, thinking they had her cornered and relentlessly pursued her. Under Shen Ruyan's lead, the sounds of thunder in the void became more frequent and powerful. However, unbeknownst to the Ghost Hall cultivators due to Shen Ruyan's deliberate concealment, they remained unaware of the true danger. The chase, though brief, soon culminated in a dramatic conclusion. At one moment, Shen Ruyan suddenly halted, seemingly giving up the struggle, and was quickly surrounded by the cultivators once more. Yet before the cultivators could mock her, she activated her innate ability, the Thunder Spirit True Body, and transformed into a being of pure lightning. A highly concentrated burst of 5 elements thunder erupted from her, shaking the heavens, and forced the surrounding Ghost Hall cultivators to retreat several hundred meters to avoid the devastating strike. Rumble! The fearsome 5 elements thunder did not strike any of the cultivators, but instead blasted into a particular area of the void. This left the surrounding Ghost Hall cultivators puzzled. Boom! However, in the next moment, an unexpected transformation occurred. The spot of the void that had seemed empty exploded with terrifying force. From that point, endless waves of thunder surged out like a tidal wave of lightning. The Ghost Hall cultivators couldn't react in time and were immediately struck by the onslaught, suffering serious injuries. Shen Ruyan, now in her thunder spirit form, virtually ignored the waves of thunder, even gaining insights into new thunder Dao from the chaos. The power unleashed by her strike was, naturally, the spirit of thunder and lightning of this location. Although it had been hiding in the void, for Shen Ruyan, it shone as clearly as a beacon. Awaken, spirit of thunder and lightning. With her successful strike, Shen Ruyan didn't hesitate to further invoke the Thunder Dao, aggressively drawing out the spirit of thunder and lightning presence. At this moment, she used the spirit of thunder and lightning as an amplifier, using her own 5 elements thunder Tao as a catalyst to wildly ignite the power of the thunder. Rumble! Instantly, the void exploded with terrifying thunder, and a prismatic thunder spirit emerged, appearing crystalline and resembling a jade keyrin. Stimulated by Shen Ruyan, the wild thunder power burst forth from the spirit of thunder and lightning, targeting the surrounding ghost hall cultivators. The spirit of thunder and lightning, a natural entity, inherently despised the powers wielded by these cultivators and instinctively targeted them with its attacks. This formidable thunder power had reached the peak of Tao mastery. However, without having refined the spirit of thunder and lightning, some of this power leaked out, striking indiscriminately. Faced with the formidable power of the spirit of thunder and lightning, the ghost hall cultivators were even more terrified. They had not anticipated that Shen Ruyan could so easily trigger an attack of such terrifying magnitude. Rumble! The situation quickly reversed. The power of the spirit of thunder and lightning transformed into a colossal dragon of lightning that lit up the world, striking all the ghost hall cultivators with devastating force. The cultivators, barely surviving the first wave of attacks, were immediately overwhelmed by the next surge of the enraged spirit of thunder and lightning. The enraged spirit of thunder and lightning completely transformed the area into a thunderous torrent and a furnace of lightning, turning the trapped cultivators into nothing more than beasts in a slaughter, endlessly scorched by relentless thunder. The battle ended without suspense. After the thunder subsided, the void was utterly shattered, strewn with fragments of lightning, resembling a chaotic pool of thunder. In the void, the only figure still standing was Shen Ruyan, along with the now calm spirit of thunder and lightning nearby. The ghost hall cultivators lay scattered on the ground, reduced to charred remains. Despite her victory, Shen Ruyan appeared somewhat disheveled and was nearly exhausted, her energy faint. Yet this battle, fought against greater numbers and across higher levels, ending in the complete annihilation of her enemies, was undoubtedly a testament to her title as the Holy Daughter of Thunderclap Valley. After a brief respite, Shen Ruyan finally began to collect the opportunity that was hers, the spirit of thunder and lightning. The spirit's agitation had been exhausted in the battle, leaving it docile and submissive, a double victory for Shen Ruyan. Without hesitation, she found a secluded valley nearby and began to slowly absorb and refine the spirit. The threads of new thunder Tao and the power of the spirit were greedily absorbed by her, rapidly restoring and boosting her energy, breaking through limits one after another. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in another part of the immortal cave abode, after annihilating all the sacred skeleton sect cultivators, Jiang Chengxuan left that area, calm and composed. He then took out the profound Tao disc again to initiate his heavenly calculation technique. Having achieved the peak of Tao mastery, he now possessed the strength to confront a Mahayana Dailord head-on. He was not afraid of the so-called demon ancestor skeleton. At the moment demon ancestor skeleton tried to divine his whereabouts, Jiang Chengxuan had already sensed the attempt. However, demon ancestor skeleton ultimately could not break the heavenly calculation technique, which reassured Jiang Chengxuan, but also left him somewhat disappointed. Had demon ancestor skeleton truly sought him out, it would have been uncertain who would fall, given the demon ancestor skeleton's ignorance of his capabilities. However, since demon ancestor skeleton did not come looking, Jiang Chengxuan saw no need to provoke a battle unnecessarily. For Jiang Chengxuan, the priority was to locate Shen Ruyan and the others. That was what mattered most at the moment. Immersed in his divination, Jiang Chengxuan noticed that his powers of divination had strengthened considerably after achieving the peak of Tao mastery. The divination results this time were exceedingly clear, revealing the scenery of a valley, which gradually became visible. A vision of a valley appeared in Jiang Chengxuan's mind, where, above the valley amidst layers of clouds, divine lightning flickered. Jiang Chengxuan immediately showed a delighted expression. Without further ado, this sign clearly indicated the current location of Shen Ruyan. Employing the power at the peak of Tao mastery for divination, he was finally able to deduce a clear result rather than just a vague direction. Moreover, from the divination, Jiang Chengxuan could tell that there was no danger surrounding Shen Ruyan, which undoubtedly was even better news. Without any hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan transformed into a streak of multicolored light, speeding towards the valley indicated by his divination. In just a moment, under the full-speed flight, the valley abruptly came into view before Jiang Chengxuan. Standing at the entrance of the valley, Jiang Chengxuan felt a surge of excitement and joy, believing that Shen Ruyan was similarly longing for him. The valley was bathed in warm sunlight, appearing as a sacred place rejuvenated after a storm. Just as Jiang Chengxuan was about to enter, a soft and familiar sound of footsteps suddenly came through. A figure slowly emerged from the valley, bathed in sunlight, descending like a celestial being. At that moment when they appeared in each other's view, both of their gazes locked onto each other's eyes instantly. Looking at each other, the hearts of these two mighty beings of the Tianheng realm simultaneously surged with warmth. Husband, wife, both called out simultaneously, running towards each other in the most ordinary manner, their shadows quickly merging in the sunlight, then becoming one. They embraced quietly without words. Holding Shen Ruyan's slender body in his arms, Jiang Chengxuan finally felt immense peace and tranquility. Shen Ruyan also felt completely relaxed, as if this embrace was all that existed in the world at that moment. After a long while in each other's arms, they finally stepped back, and only then did Jiang Chengxuan notice the change in Shen Ruyan, commenting, "Wife, you've broken through to the peak of Tao fusion. Congratulations." His face was filled with joy, as Shen Ruyan's aura had reached the threshold of Tao mastery. "Thank you, husband." Shen Ruyan smiled gently, her expression sweet. "And you, husband, your aura is even more unfathomable to me now," she inquired of Jiang Chengxuan, knowing he must have gained significantly during his time in the immortal cave abode. Your husband has also made some gains. Now I am at the peak of Tao mastery," Jiang Chengxuan replied with a gentle laugh, his tone light. However, this statement slightly shocked Shen Ruyan before she felt immense joy. "Congratulations, husband. I thought my achievements were not small, but compared to yours, they seem insignificant," she chuckled, her heart swelling with pride, playfully teasing him. In response, Jiang Chengxuan simply smiled, sharing the events of his journey with Shen Ruyan in detail. From entering the immortal cave abode and facing the meteorite array to the ancient stone platform, where he battled the 4 elemental giants and contended with 9th-level beasts for the spiritual fruit. Then to the most perilous 7 kills array, and afterwards, his breakthrough to the peak of Tao mastery and his extermination of the disciples of the sacred skeleton sect. Jiang Chengxuan always shared everything with Shen Ruyan without reservation. Listening, Shen Ruyan's heart clenched, especially when hearing about the 7 kills array, which almost claimed Jiang Chengxuan's life, prompting her to grasp his hand tightly. As a fellow cultivator, Shen Ruyan knew all too well the dangers of what Jiang Chengxuan described so casually. Sensing his Tao companion's concern, Jiang Chengxuan gently squeezed her hand to comfort her, and she finally felt reassured. "Wife, tell me about your experiences too." As they walked through the sun-drenched valley, for the moment, they forgot everything else but each other. As it turned out, Shen Ruyan had been transported to a remote area upon arriving in the immortal cave abode, spending much time traveling without notable incidents. Until she encountered the spirit of thunder of lightning and the disciples of the ghost hall, it had been the most significant danger of her trip to the immortal cave abode. Her adventures, compared to Jiang Chengxuan's, were relatively smooth and straightforward, although Jiang Chengxuan's expression turned sharp when he heard of the ghost hall disciples' attack on Shen Ruyan. These demonic cultivators, using unknown means to infiltrate the immortal cave abode, should they meet me, none would leave alive, Jiang Chengxuan remarked with a hint of menace in his eyes. "Indeed, these demonic cultivators have become utterly lawless," Shen Ruyan agreed, reflecting a shared resolve to eliminate these threats. The couple then spent considerable time forgetting their disputes, deeply engrossed in conversation within the idyllic valley. It wasn't until Shen Ruyan brought up another crucial piece of information that they considered leaving their temporary haven. "Husband, on my way here, I spotted a mysterious region where the energy was bizarrely intense, suggesting the presence of a tremendous opportunity." Shen Ruyan suddenly reminisced, sharing the details with Jiang Chengxuan. Initially, she was wary of this remote area because the discoveries there were too eerie, and even with her strength, she dared not explore carelessly. Even now, having advanced nearly to Tao mastery, she remained uncertain about venturing there. If it weren't for hearing about Jiang Chengxuan's formidable achievements in the immortal cave abode, she might have hesitated even to mention it. Jiang Chengxuan listened intently as she continued. "In that remote place, the spirit force was exceptionally weak, and there was no sign of vigorous life, leading me to suspect that the presence of this opportunity might be the cause. It's unusual for the immortal cave abode to have such a vast, barren area. And on my way out, I noticed several enormous runes, as if hidden underground, revealing just a corner, Shen Ruyan added. These runes, massive and containing mysterious Tao rules, might be there to suppress a significant opportunity. Jiang Chengxuan understood her deductions must be accurate. Many ancient techniques have profound connections with runes, a fact that becomes even more evident within this immortal cave abode. Every trial site Jiang Chengxuan visited contained these ancient runes, from the ancient runes on the grand gates that lead into the immortal cave abode, to the platform where the 4 elemental giants resided, and then to the 7 kill array. Wherever runes were present, there was always something unexpected, and often they were where opportunities lay. According to Shen Ruyan's descriptions, which Jiang Chengxuan found to be highly credible, there indeed exists a barren land within the immortal cave abode, as she described. It is truly inconceivable and defies common sense. This immortal cave abode, forged by an ancient immortal, where every blade of grass and every inch of soil was his creation. Under such circumstances, how could there be a large barren area where not a single blade of grass grows? Could it be that this ancient immortal would allow such a desolate scene to exist within his own cave? Even the most ordinary cultivator would not leave useless and unsightly things within their own cave, let alone an ancient immortal. Dharma, wealth, companions, and land. These 4 elements are highly valued by cultivators. The land, being the cave itself, is considered akin to a Tao companion or an intrinsic spiritual treasure, and cannot simply be makeshift. Thus, Jiang Chengxuan wholeheartedly agrees and supports Shen Ruyan's deduction. The barrenness of that area clearly suggests some hidden secrets. After listening to Shen Ruyan, Jiang Chengxuan almost instantly felt an intuition, a strong premonition telling him that this place might even be the central area of the immortal cave abode. Wife, this information is crucial. I too feel that this place must hold an incredible opportunity, Jiang Chengxuan said to Shen Ruyan with joy and encouragement in his words, which she found very gratifying. From the moment they met, the mood between the two had always been exceedingly joyful. If that's the case, should we go and explore that area immediately? Shen Ruyan inquired, sensing Jiang Chengxuan's intent. Yes, but before heading there, we can still make some preparations to ensure everything is proper. After weighing all considerations, Jiang Chengxuan decided not to miss this opportunity. However, he was also acutely aware of the dangers within the immortal cave abode and could not afford to be negligent. Greater the opportunity, greater the danger. This has always been an iron law within the immortal cave abode, where nothing comes without a cost. Moreover, with many gains already made, it was a good time to organize them slightly, enhancing both himself and Shen Ruyan, fully equipping themselves. According to Shen Ruyan, that place was located in an extremely remote area of the immortal cave abode, typically hard for ordinary people to discover. Because normal cultivators often have the thinking that places with abundant energy are more likely to contain opportunities. However, what Shen Ruyan discovered was quite the opposite. In this case, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan could prepare thoroughly without rushing to compete for the site. That's also good. The dangers of this immortal cave abode are not simple, Shen Ruyan naturally agreed. The two returned to the cave Shen Ruyan had found during her breakthrough and started to inventory their current gains. Shen Ruyan sat opposite Jiang Chengxuan, swept her jade hand over the storage treasure, and several rays of spiritual light flew out. An ancient small furnace, a spiritual fruit radiating golden light, and a purple gemstone with the color of glaze were Shen Ruyan's gains along the way. Among these, the ancient small furnace was a heaven-connecting spiritual treasure, the golden spiritual fruit a 7th-level spiritual fruit, and the purple gemstone an 8th-level material. Such gains were already quite substantial. If placed within the floodgate realm, they would be enough to cause a storm of bloodshed and incite fights among several sects. However, compared to Jiang Chengxuan's gains, hers seemed slightly lesser. Let these materials be handled by you, husband, Shen Ruyan said, handing over the materials and treasures to Jiang Chengxuan. He understood her intentions well. Between them, there was no longer a need to keep count, so he accepted all the materials. In the future, if he were to refine any pills or spiritual instruments, he would make an extra set to give back to Shen Ruyan. After Shen Ruyan stored the treasures, Jiang Chengxuan began to take out his gains. With a wave of his hand, the cave lit up with countless glows, bright as day, materials from a ninth-level beast piled up like a small hill, supreme spiritual fruits, and top-level materials emitting a terrifying aura. The moment these treasures appeared, they transformed the ordinary cave into a trove of wonders. Even Shen Ruyan, who had seen many grand scenes, was awestruck by Jiang Chengxuan's generosity. Should you wish to craft any treasure in the future, do not hesitate to ask. I can satisfy all your needs, Jiang Chengxuan said with a teasing smile, provoking a playful scold from Shen Ruyan. Ha ha ha, no more jokes. This Thunder Dao fruit will greatly benefit you. You should refine it here, he continued. Once you break through to the Dao mastery, we will have a better chance when we visit that treasure land. Jiang Chengxuan looked tenderly at Shen Ruyan as he took out a purple golden spiritual fruit and handed it to her. This Dao fruit, containing the extremely terrifying essence of the Thunder Dao and covered with fine purple lightning, was obtained by Jiang Chengxuan after defeating a giant of the thunder element in the Dao mastery. Husband, Shen Ruyan said softly, acknowledging the intimacy and lack of need for formalities between them as she accepted the Thunder Dao fruit. Her heart was deeply moved by this gesture. Since they had become Dao companions, Jiang Chengxuan's care for her had been meticulous. At his signal, Shen Ruyan calmed her mind and straightened up, circulating her cultivation technique to begin refining the fruit. The rule of the 5 elements thunder manifested from her being, and under this force, the Dao fruit transformed into a pure energy, merging into Shen Ruyan's body. Her aura began to climb slowly, with Jiang Chengxuan sitting by her side, guarding her pathway without moving an inch. Time in that moment seemed to stand peacefully still. Shen Ruyan's own strength was already very close to Dao mastery, being at the peak of Dao fusion. Originally, Jiang Chengxuan had also reached the culmination of Dao fusion before he chose to break through to Dao mastery. The likelihood of a successful breakthrough for those who reach completeness is inherently higher than for those who force their way through. With Jiang Chengxuan's protection and the Thunder Dao fruit aiding her, both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were fully confident in her breakthrough. However, such an endeavor was inherently risky and not to be taken lightly. After briefly testing the waters of the breakthrough, Shen Ruyan chose to pause. The power of the Thunder Dao fruit had already bridged the last gap in her cultivation. Her state was completely peaked, even more so than Jiang Chengxuan at his time of breakthrough. Since Jiang Chengxuan was present, he shared his experiences of his own breakthrough to Dao mastery with Shen Ruyan. There was no rush. Preparation was essential for a successful breakthrough. The breakthrough to Dao mastery, aside from refining the bottleneck of the realm, requires patience and carefulness, especially breaking through the Dao rule, which is the most perilous part, Jiang Chengxuan explained to Shen Ruyan, analyzing the obstacles he had encountered during his breakthrough. The key to breaking through to Dao mastery lies in discovering or comprehending a new essence of the Dao. This acts as a catalyst to fully master one's own Dao rule. Only by doing this can one truly control the power of the Dao rule and achieve Dao mastery. In the process of comprehending new Dao rules, it is very easy to get lost in the primordial chaos of the universe. This was the greatest danger, one that Jiang Chengxuan himself had nearly succumbed to. Shen Ruyan listened intently to Jiang Chengxuan's detailed insights, which could significantly increase the likelihood of her successful breakthrough. Finally, Jiang Chengxuan brought out the black lotus he had obtained in the meteorite area and placed it beside Shen Ruyan. This black lotus served as the ultimate insurance, ensuring a foolproof breakthrough. It was the essence of the black lotus that had pulled Jiang Chengxuan back from being lost in the primordial chaos of the universe. Now, in this immortal cave abode where items were abundant, it was a significant boost for Shen Ruyan, who was about to break through to Dao mastery. It goes without saying that Shen Ruyan, being close to Jiang Chengxuan, also possessed an incredibly strong fortune. Finally, Jiang Chengxuan brought out the resources for breakthroughs that he hadn't used up, adding some from their current loot from the immortal cave abode, amassing enough for Shen Ruyan's needs. Shen Ruyan sat in the middle of a spirit-gathering array, surrounded by treasures. This ordinary cave had been transformed into a sanctum for breakthrough. "It's ready, Ruyan, I'll protect you. You may begin," Jiang Chengxuan said. "Okay." As the cave regained its tranquility, Shen Ruyan officially commenced her breakthrough. Though centuries behind Jiang Chengxuan, if Shen Ruyan succeeded now, she would still be one of the fastest in the history of Thunderclap Valley to achieve Dao mastery. Sizzling sounds filled the air as the rule of the 5 elements thunder manifested, with thunder flickering uncertainly throughout the cave. Seeing this, Jiang Chengxuan slowly rose and moved to the entrance of the cave to sit down, his spirit and consciousness firmly focused on Shen Ruyan, ready to assist at any moment. By then, Shen Ruyan had fully entered the state of breakthrough. The surrounding resources and treasures, as she cycled her cultivation technique, manifested their powers, continuously releasing their energy. Shen Ruyan absorbed these forces entirely, her aura beginning to rise rapidly. Just a few breaths in, her surging aura quickly touched the bottleneck. This bottleneck, however, was exceptionally fragile for Shen Ruyan, trembling at the slightest touch, ready to shatter at any moment. Initially, Jiang Chengxuan had utilized the power of pills to trigger his breakthrough. Similarly, Shen Ruyan now experienced the same effect, bolstered by her fortunate circumstances. After several contacts, the bottleneck of Tao mastery suddenly shattered, serving as a catalyst for the barriers of the realm to slowly dissolve. This was akin to opening the first gate to the breakthrough to Tao mastery. What remained was a gradual erosion of the realm's barriers, until the realm fully expanded to the level of Tao mastery. Shen Ruyan handled the breakthrough process adeptly, exhibiting no disturbances. Outside, Jiang Chengxuan, witnessing Shen Ruyan's rapid induction of the breakthrough aura, felt immense joy. Indeed, Shen Ruyan's breakthrough was progressing faster than his own had. After all, the conditions he provided for her were even more favorable than those he had himself used. As Shen Ruyan's bottleneck shattered, her aura began to rise again. Each cycle of her cultivation technique saw the surrounding treasures breathing their energies into her, like taking deep breaths, transferring their power to her. This process was bound to be lengthy and required patience. Both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan understood this well and settled into a state of meditation, focusing deeply on their cultivation. For Shen Ruyan, having Jiang Chengxuan's protection undoubtedly provided immense reassurance. She felt completely confident about the breakthrough, without any rush or anxiety. Time in the mountains does not abide by the years. When the cold ends, one does not know the year, reflected the state of their tranquil retreat. In the bustling and competitive realm of the immortal cave abode, the place where Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan resided became a rare sanctuary of peace. Time passed unnoticed, and Shen Ruyan's aura neared Tao mastery realm. The treasures around her were almost entirely consumed, their energies transformed into her dharmic power. Ding! At a certain moment, a mysterious sound resonated through the air. A powerful vortex of spirit absorption suddenly manifested around Shen Ruyan, furiously drawing in the surrounding spiritual energies. Jiang Chengxuan opened his eyes, a flash of spiritual light within them signaling his awareness that Shen Ruyan had completed her breakthrough. The cave had transformed into a domain of bizarre thunder and lightning, filled with explosive and dominant forces suffusing the void. A breakthrough in realm signified that Shen Ruyan's journey through this particular advancement was halfway completed. But the next step was crucial for Tao mastery. As the vortex furiously devoured the primordial spirit, Shen Ruyan's realm gradually stabilized within Tao mastery level. Subsequently, the pervasive five elements thunder Tao, which filled the area, began its strange transare. Jiang Chengxuan's focus intensified even further, his spirit entirely concentrated on the unfolding changes.